All right, welcome everybody to day two of the fourth annual Motorsports Sponsorship Summit. It's the 2025 Motorsports Sponsorship Summit. It's our first two-day summit and our first Sunday sessions. We're trying it out to see what happens. Yesterday was a phenomenal day. We got some wonderful information from some great panelists, and today we have an all-star cast of panelists across off-road, drifting, drag racing, sprint cars, midgets, sports car racing, and we're going to compare the differences in sponsorships among the different series, because in some cases you have races that last just a couple seconds versus maybe a minute, and in other cases you have races that last 1,000 miles. So there are differences in how these races are broadcast and how they can activate with fans and attendees, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how you can get sponsored.
Check if the source device is connected and powered on, or press the input button.
So someone needs to mute their microphone, please. And then we're going to get started. George, let's pull up our first session panelists. This is the off-road sponsorships. We have Joe Bowman, Director of Marketing from Slime, Marty Fiolka. He's a promoter at Crandon. I know Marty a long time, and he's been around since the core days, Marty and I. And Jim Ryan, who's the Vice President of Sales and Marketing of SCORE. Everybody loves the Baja 1000 and all the Baja races. So we're going to talk about short course racing, desert racing. I'd like to talk about the festival off-roads like King of the Hammers as well, and how brands can activate and how you as a driver can create value for your sponsors at those events. So off-road's interesting. And Joe, I'll start with you since you represent a brand today. We had Tony Malunzi on yesterday from ITW Group. He represents Gum Out. He's a brand manager of Gum Out. He was talking about how different brands at ITW Group use different types of racing to promote the brands because it's relevant. Slime is an obvious choice for off-road. Tell us a little bit why a brand like Slime is good for off-road and how someone could get sponsored by Slime.
Well, my favorite history has been that when I first started with Slime 10 years ago down at the SCORE races, shout out to Jim and SCORE, hey, you know, the racers aren't going to be that open to using our products. And when I went down there, I found out why. It's because that we weren't demonstrating our products to the racers. So we really like the contingency opportunities at races. That gives a brand like us a chance to demonstrate our products to the race teams, especially contingency day when they come through to get technically inspected. So we'd let them puncture our tire, see that slime sealant works inside the tire. So that's from the brands. Man, what a golden opportunity. I call all you off-road racers guinea pigs for our products. You're the best testers for our products. Monday through Friday, you're out there making a living with trucks and trailers, and on the weekends you go race them and put them through hell. So we love that. So after a few years, folks realizing, wow, that those products do work. Now it's up to the race teams to say hi to us, and it's always been a surprise to me that we'll go all the way to a race, set up, have our products on display, touch them, feel them, grab a sample, and only 10% of the teams will stop and actually say hi to us and meet us. So step one, if you're at a race and those brands, especially the brands that are at the race, definitely figure out how to make some time to introduce yourself, say hi to them real quick, see what they're saying about their products, what's new, learn about their products. You're going to be very busy racing, prepping to race, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe one of your race team volunteers or co-partners on your a person on your team can represent your team with these all of us brands at a race, especially your social media website person. Always make sure you have that person on your team. If it's you and you don't have time to do all of that, find somebody else that can help do that. So that's at the race. And then of course, after the race, I don't know, we've really liked contingency. That way we can get involved with more different race series, not just off-road. And it means that the team is going to use our product, step one. So whether you're using a brand's product now or you're considering it, go buy some, get your hands on their product. If you like their product and you use it for your team and you use it to help make a living Monday through Friday, whatever you do, construction, plumbing, landscaping, whatever, that's what the brand wants to know, is not only that it helps for instance, our products help teams win races, prevent flats, make more podiums, but also Monday through Friday, it helps them get their job done on time faster. So once the brand knows that you're all in with their product in that regard, that'll help cut through some of the clutter, and a brand like us will know you're all in once you know about our product.
Well, I like the whole contingency thing. I want to stay there for a second, Joe, because I think in off-road racing, contingency is a very large part of it, both in short course and desert racing, especially if you go to contingency, at the score races. Wow, that's half the fun is being there along all the teams and all the activity and all the brands. Let's go to Jim for a second and talk about contingency. Jim, you've been involved in off-road racing for as long as I've known you, over 2 decades, even starting with a magazine that you used to publish, which was the core magazine for the off-road community. Let's talk about contingency for just a second. And is that a good way for a brand to start in sponsoring off-road and getting to know drivers and then expanding into larger sponsorships? How do contingencies work? Just describe that.
Yeah. Good overview, Joe. Yeah, contingency's been a staple with score races since day one. It's kind of like Mardi Gras wrapped up into tech, and a lot of other elements have been added. But yeah, the interaction with those sponsors who do activate at a score race is critical for sure on that stage one. What's added since then, that's your first contact. So we have that's a growing area again, starting to get more kind of getting to Mexico is another part of that logistics. But that whole area is growing again because we want to see those sponsors grow, and the opportunities for the teams grow specifically. Contingency is now morphed into more of a even bigger marketing program with we live stream those days, and they get pretty tremendous, to my surprise, because it's 8 to 10 hours of live streaming, the ratings on that days, and they're always during the weekdays also. So the ratings are reach and impact is really good on those, but it gives the teams a chance to call out their sponsors first of all, and to get more exposure for them, which is it's just another dimension. But contingency is good. We promote all that from a sponsor perspective. They like to see obviously the branding that goes with the teams and the verbal promotions that they can do also.
And it's also contingency, at least for desert races, where you're not really sitting in grandstands watching the entire event. It's impossible because they're hundreds, thousands of miles long. Contingency is a place where the fans can activate and get together with the brands and engage, and that's part of the activation that brands can have. Whether it's the Mint 400 or a score race. Whereas now, let's go to short course. There's still contingency programs, but contingency itself is slightly different. Let's go to Zach's up there. Okay, let's go to Marty and talk about pits and activations in the pits versus contingency at desert races. It's the place where fans go and activate and hang out and have fun and meet the teams.
They do for sure at all the short course races, and desert races too, where the fans. One of the beauties of the whole sport is that there's interaction. There's no barriers between you going into the pits, you talking to drivers, you seeing how they're prepping their cars. I mean, contingency, I think to have to take a step back, people don't even understand what that is. Back in the old days when companies wanted to get involved, they would be there at contingency at the races, which is just before tech, and they would hand out decals. And if you ran their product and you had their decal, they would provide you cash or they provide you product contingent on you winning. And that's where that comes from. In short course racing, that's sadly fallen by the wayside. The hard part is that I'm sure companies would still want to do it, but the problem is actually on site, going through the process of checking off contingency sheets and having people actually do the grind of doing that is difficult to do. I think there's an opportunity, I think, for some drivers to maybe go to some companies, say, hey, I'll set up a contingency program for you in this series. You help me get to the races, but I'll do that for you. That's something that I've thought about now for a long time. It's like drivers should be able to do that. Don't forget it. At the big races, we have Labor Day at Crandon, we have 450 race teams there. So race teams. So, there's plenty of opportunity to go from pit to pit and do a work contingency program for somebody like Slime or for anybody else who's involved. But, getting the boots on the ground means, more expense on activation side. So that's the challenge in short course. It's in the Midwest. A lot of the companies are out here in the West Coast. So that's historically been an issue, but it doesn't really exist much in short course now as we know it anymore. The biggest thing that's closest to that is probably Friday in Crandon, when we still have our parade in downtown. We shut off the streets in downtown, and we have all the race teams actually basically have a 3-hour car show in downtown Crandon. That's the closest I can kind of picture to being at like a score Baja 1000 or Baja 500 or San Felipe, where that whole event of getting the cars down there, getting the people down there, and the fans down there to interact is a big part of the weekend.
So the way I view contingency is that it's a way to get to know a new sponsor without the sponsor having to make a major commitment. So you can start a relationship. And whether or not you win a race or even get the contingency award, whatever that might be for getting on the podium, now you know somebody. Now you just met somebody, and that potentially could grow into a much larger, longer term sponsorship. The big issue with sponsorship is drivers and teams just never know how to meet a sponsor. Well, contingency is a great way to meet a lot of sponsors. And then if you can work it beyond contingency, where you're now bringing them into the sport so that they sponsor your car, and then you have a bigger program where you bring them in and they sponsor your car as well as the series or the track. Now you can work larger marketing and bigger programs. Have you seen, Marty, any contingency programs work like that, where somebody started out just with contingency and then it grew into a team and then maybe a team and a series sponsorship?
Yeah, I've seen it work certainly more back in the day. That was a very common thing, especially in desert racing and short course. But there was a series or somebody there within this series kind of managing that process, right?
Right.
I'm saying for a driver, though, you could approach a sponsor and actually go to the race and activate for them in doing that. That's one way potentially to gain money for your race program. The other thing that I'm finding with a lot of racers, though, is you just said, go to contingency and meet people. Well, the problem in today's world, if I'm sure we all know this, is that getting a hold of somebody via text, via telephone, going to the office is difficult, right? Everybody's kind of hiding behind their cell phones. But as a driver, whether you're a hobbyist or a professional, to me, you have to go to where the target-rich environment is. The races are great because people are the people you want to meet are standing there. Same thing for like the SEMA show, certainly the same thing for PRI. King of the Hammers, whatever events are going to be, the people you want to talk to are standing there in their booth or they're around their booth. It makes it 100 times easier. You get much more traction going to the events and being there, even if it's not necessarily your race series you're involved with. But that's where the people you want to meet are. They're at the events.
And when you say target rich, what's interesting is not just target rich in terms of the brands, the spectators, the demographics in off-road are very diverse. You have middle America, middle income UTV teams, and then you have millionaire trophy truck drivers. So there's a wide spread versus, let's say, in other types of racing, some might cater to very wealthy, let's say sports car, more on the higher end gentleman racers, a lot of millionaires, versus sprint car drifting, which is more of the guy next door, someone, who has a car in the garage. So off-road gives an opportunity to market to a large, broad demographic of consumers that all enjoy the outdoors.
Yeah, absolutely. That's been part of the beauty of it. And the other thing that's very prevalent, it's great for racers in terms of having a variety of classes, whether it's short course, desert, to actually go compete in. Of course, what unfortunately the downside of that is that now if you're a promoter like me at Crandon, now you've got to divide whatever purse money you're trying to come up with. Instead of the sprint car, we got one car winning one race Saturday night. Now we've got 12 classes or 15 classes, and that tends to water down that side of it. But it does make entry into the sport much easier, for sure.
That's a really valid point as well, because with desert racing, you're not making your money so much from, and I should say all off-road racing, you're not making the money so much from the purses. You're making money more from sponsors. Right. Whereas in sprint car racing, like you said, they don't make as much money from sponsors. They make most of their money, if they're winning, from purses.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Jim can speak to that too.
Jim,
Yeah,
let's
the purse is something we'd like to work on. We've come a long way, that's for sure. But that's a future project. We're trying to bring in outside money to kind of push that into the next evolution of supporting our teams. I think I want to get back to something though. Contingency is a great place to get started,
Mhm.
but the teams nowadays have a much bigger opportunity to create their own packages, social media wise, live streaming wise, content, especially for us and all the series actually. But we have to fill anywhere from 18 hours to 50 hours of race time on a live stream program for any one of our races. But we're also hooked into through technology now, all the teams from trophy trucks for sure, but it's down to class 11 guys. If they're set up correctly with the Starlink system and they're hooked into our feeds for
you mean the
live
Star
stream,
Stream system, Star Stream?
right, that right at this point. Um, all of that is working really well. So the Baja 1000, our studio in El Cajon, that's a major operation now, but we're able to feed 100 teams into that live stream during any
Wow.
given race. We had about 35, 40 teams that were part of that program for the Baja 1000. So we're getting that dynamic in there. You don't have to be winning. It's action shots. We had amazing feeds come in from chase trucks talking to us on the run. So all of that's evolving, and it levels the playing field for almost all the teams, at least in our area, our the score series.
And what,
So
what it also does, it shifts the value proposition. No longer do you have to be at an event in person shaking hands, but
right,
now it elevates the value of the live streaming and the video content, which can obviously be shared digitally and go viral if something's really good. So it increases the value of the series that drivers can add to sponsors, because you're no longer relying just on a live television stream that might last for, let's say an hour of short course racing on television. Now you have perpetual streaming videos that people are sharing and posting and adding on to their feeds and Facebook and Reels. So the live streaming, how long ago did the live streaming really start to take over? I'm guessing it was 2 years ago at the Baja 1000 is when Star
no,
Stream
no,
first
it's
started.
probably less than that. We worked on it for like 5 years. It really finally got the technology and the right crews and just evolution about a year and a half ago.
Okay.
Is when it really started anchoring as a full-fledged show that would hold together and the technology, and it grows exponentially now every race.
Are there
But
any teams that are doing a really good job with sponsors on the live streaming by representing sponsors through the live stream footage?
absolutely, they range from the top guys. I mean, the top guys who really worked at it are the Herbst team and Ampudia's, um, Bryce Menzies. They have full-blown programs, but that doesn't limit that. The dynamics of the teams creating their own video and their social media now is, some of those are outstanding. The talent that's out there that can do video production for teams and their social media networks, that's a level, almost a level playing field from a class 11 guys up to a trophy truck. So they need an outlet for that. They can obviously do their Facebook stuff, and that's one thing they should be looking at the series. Like, what are the supporting mechanisms? For us, we have it staged all the way from obviously contingency, that startup and that exposure level, to the social media feeds, to the live stream feeds, to collaborations on their social media back with us, and then the feature coverage and score journal at the end, which dives down into that feature content. So there's a lot of layers that we can take care of the teams and their sponsors
Nice, real nice. And you work
It's
with teams to elevate those sponsors as well.
all the time. We actually, the second part of that, are as important as the data. What are teams? When they're looking at going to a sponsor? What's the return? What's the reach and impact of all the series? We provide a full blown marketing data book, a brand book. At the end of every year, we produce one for the sponsors, and then it gets updated as the year goes on. But it gives that reach and impact for the series on the potential exposure that team is going to have in that particular series. So we work with teams kind of nonstop on their pitching programs and all that. And that information is available on our website. So any team can access it.
Awesome. Excellent. And then I think, Marty, you had something you were chiming in?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, that was kind of, the desert guys have definitely pushed that envelope with the live streaming. I think we can also give some credit to Dave Cole and the King of the Hammers guys. They've done it for a couple of years too. Actually, at Crandon, the scenario is different. We weren't necessarily beholden to the series over Labor Day because of we brought in Class 11, we brought in Ultra 4 racing, and Sunday is a separate day from the Champ Off-Road Series, because we wanted to control our own programming, our ability to raise more money for the racers, which we have. We probably I think in the last 9 years have given back almost $3 million to the racers themselves, to the Red Bull program that we have.
Nice. Thank you for that.
This year, because of working with Starstream System and George, we were able to actually bring live cameras into short course racing for the first time. And we did it because we have a program with Mav TV where Crandon produced 16 hours of live television that was literally television live with commercial inserts and everything from the racetrack. But one of the things we did, besides live drones, which also kind of were pioneered at Crandon, at least in short course for sure, but now we have the ability to actually go and have live in-car cameras, because some of the teams step up to actually buy the equipment. That's part of the challenge here, is that the producer, us, doesn't have the equipment the race teams do. Desert racing is great because you can, as Jim says, you have hours to fill. With us, it's a 15 minutes race. You can't promise the race teams you're going to cut to their cameras. So we had to literally kind of pick and choose certain Pro 2, Pro 4 drivers. We had them in Ultra 4. We had them in Class 11 too. We had a couple of them in, Blake Wilkie called and said, I'm going to put one in. We're going to do this. And he was the one who kind of instigated that. So in a case of us, we actually kind of took over the production and kind of elevated it beyond what we think, the World Championship at Crandon deserves after 56 years. And it worked for us.
Yeah. Well, let me ask, if I'm a driver and I'm creating my own content, I'd like to be inserted into your television production. Is that an option? Can I give you footage that you might use, or do you already know what footage you're going to use and you're going to go out and film it? How does that work?
Well, no, in our case, it's live. Like literally, we produced it live, so we were cutting to the cameras live. Live stream. It was, but the difference is it was on Mav TV cable, and so we had hard cuts, we had hard breaks. It was different than just doing a kind of a more organic live stream in our case.
That's a big production.
We're the same. It's live.
Nice. Let's go to Joe for a second. Joe, the off-road industry obviously is inundated with pickup trucks and trailers, and you are a tire sealant. Can you hear me? I know that my mic was not real good.
Yeah, for me, I have to actually move closer to my computer. I don't know why. I've been doing a lot of different online this and that. With the fires in the Palisades, I was the only friend and family connected to the internet for the last couple of days. Lost a few homes of friends and family down there, so prayers to them.
Prayers to everybody.
But go ahead, trucks and trailers.
Trucks and trailers. So that's an obvious fit for Slime. I can see that if I'm a driver or a team and I want to be sponsored by Slime because I'm in desert racing or I'm in short course racing, and I think that I can give you good visibility. I have a relationship, let's say, with the series, and I might be able to get some footage on their live stream. What's a good way to approach you or show you value? What is it that you're looking for from me in order to sponsor me?
Well, no matter if it's a race team or media or anyone else that we're partnering with, my first step is to make sure that you know about our products, like our products, use our products. So right out of the gate, I'll send them to you for free. This is our truck and trailer flat tire repair kit. And the first 3 teams online today that email me, joe@slime.com, with your address, I'll send you a bunch of those. And our newest line of products.
Only 3 teams. Can we make it 5?
Tire inflators. Got it. Thanks, Alex, for letting me put Slime on your show. The best target audience anywhere. So Marty and Joe
at slime.com for those of you who
everyone's
missed it.
hiding behind their cell phones. But wow, the first thing is if you are already pretty familiar or an expert with our products, you're in the top 1%. So either go buy them for yourself or email me, joe@slime.com. I'll send you some samples. In person always helps. Who knows why? Why does it have to be in person? I was just at the Apex show, which is the same time as SEMA. Only one race team came and found us over those 3 days. So we spent
Really?
hundreds of thousands of dollars to be there, and only one race team came and said hi. So of course they're on the top of our list.
Wow, that's interesting. Do you
then-
think that's because it was in the Sands Convention Center versus the Las Vegas Convention Center? Had you been in the SEMA building, do you think that would have
Yeah,
been
yeah,
different?
we've exhibited at SEMA before, but it's hard to be in two places at one time,
right.
and so it works for us there.
So it sounds
But
to me like any racer
um,
on the call, go to the Apex show as well as the
Yeah.
SEMA shows, what I'm hearing.
yeah, it's the biggest automotive aftermarket products expo in the world. With SEMA being the specialty equipment show, which is the best car show in the world. So for sure, you got to walk SEMA for 2 days, but get over to Apex for half a day. Those are billions of dollars worth of brands over there. Pretty easy to talk to. It's not that busy of a show. But with my time, one thing, Alex, I'd like to also add out there for the, well, maybe we have time later. So anyway.
No, go for it. Go ahead. We got time.
Specifically, we do like that the person is easy to communicate with. I happen to like email because I can share things with different people on my team. Hey, ship this to this person. I'll email this to our social media manager that this person is ready to rock and roll with what they're doing for us.
I'm going to interrupt real quick because I want to just
Yeah.
testify that that is true. I've known Joe since the core days, also since around 2005. And over the years, Joe has introduced me to almost every other marketing director at every other brand at the ITW group. I've met people from Fast Orange, Permatex, Spray 9, more recently Gum Out, all through Joe. So where Joe and Slime were not the right fit, Joe will forward that information if he thinks there's a good fit with one of his sister brands. So listen to what he's saying. Sometimes you can meet a marketing director that might not be able to sponsor you, but they can refer you to marketing directors of sister companies that might.
And that website is itwgb.com. Those are 8 great brands: Rain-X, Black Magic, Gum Out, Permatex, Fast Orange, Spray 9. One tip one of those guys did that contacted us, we had to sponsor this guy. He named his team after our brand, which was a coincidence. He was a Mudbog Mega Truck guy.
Time.
His team name was Slime Time. So when he contacted us and his team name was already our name, okay, we had to sponsor him. Good luck with that. I hope that helped. The other guys can chime in too.
And it was ITW Group GB.
GB, it stands for
Global
ITW
Brands.
Global Brands. ITW is Illinois Tool Works, which is a longtime manufacturer of products. So itwgb.com. Check those out, but start out with me, joe@slime.com.
Right on. Thanks, Joe. Let's go back to Marty for a second. Marty, off-road racing, especially short course racing, man, there are a lot of people in the construction industry. A lot of money, a lot of construction, obviously pickup trucks, trailers, tools. That seems to be a really good focus and start for drivers who are looking for sponsors, is to focus on the demographic of the fans and the enthusiasts. So those seem to be the obvious brands to target. Are there any advice you have that you've seen over the years? Because you've been much more than a promoter. You're also a racer, you're a writer, you publish magazines.
I
You've
think
done a lot.
Yeah, Alex, I think that you're right. I mean, I think that's the one thing that collectively, potentially, I think there's a greater awareness of the demographic, probably thanks in large measure to the side-by-sides, or these non-endemic companies are starting to look at this lifestyle brand. So in the case of desert racing, for sure, which has been 4 decades since the beginning of it, all starting in Baja in 1967, construction, blue collar plumbers, carpenters, the McMillan, all the way up to McMillan Realty building, half of San Diego, right? The McMillans, got their fortune through construction. That's been the case forever. In the Midwest, it's a little bit different. It is construction, but it's also more logging, more that type of people. Still blue collar, but that demographic specifically is different in terms that they use their side-by-sides for fishing and hunting and ice fishing and around their properties and on their farms. It's different, but they're still outdoors people. They're just
Outdoors.
different.
Yep.
But there's this commonality of the everyday man, the blue collar guy, the guy who's got a pickup truck, the guy who has a fifth wheel, that probably has a side-by-side, has a boat. They're all kind of the same mentality in a lot of ways, for sure. And especially on the racing side, and on the fan side, in at least in the Midwest, there's a lot of actual fans. There's actually fans of short course that just love coming to the races and spending a weekend to watch the races. They know the drivers. It's a little bit different, but I think Jim can speak to this too, though.
And they also, though, the fans make annual reunions out of Crandon Labor Day. I mean, families have been going there for four
generations now. We're 56 years old this year, so it's quite the long-term thing. We're already we'll be sold out again. We always are Labor Day. It's one of the best parts of the whole thing, is seeing grandfathers watching their grandkids say hi to the racers they knew, or the younger ones, and it's this constant stream. And we're seeing also, what's great about short courses now is that it's turning itself into where the big fast desert guys are coming from. The Christopher Povardis, right? The Brock Hagers, who's now making a huge impact at the Dakar Rally right now. Those guys all came from short course racing, and they're actually putting these teams are putting these guys in, like Bryce Menzies did, to actually qualify their truck, in Povardi's case, for the Baja 1000, because they're just faster in the short course. So nice. There's some crossover happening now too, which is exciting to see. But I think that the one thing that none of us in off-road racing ever worry about is the demographic aging out, the demographic becoming gray, the demographic becoming NHRA or even NASCAR to an extent. They're just not. Yes, those stalwarts, once they go, they're addicted to it, but it's always fed by youth and trophy carts to side-by-sides, youth classes. It's part of the magic of off-road racing that I think that every sponsor I deal with now is starting to understand more that that's true.
Since you had mentioned Jim and the demographics, I would say, Jim, that the demographics of desert racing are probably very, very, very similar to the demographics of short course. The psychographics being slightly different, where everybody's an outdoor enthusiast, hunting, fishing, going places. How can, if I'm a driver looking for a sponsor, how can I use the demographics to kind of reel them in by showing that this is who my target market is, and this is who I'm going to market to activate on your behalf using the series? Because it does seem like there's a very consistent demographic in desert and off-road racing, that if you got the right tool company, the right tire company, the right suspension company, it seems to me like it's a no-brainer that sponsors should sponsor this, or brands should sponsor this.
Yeah, I think Marty did a great overview on the demographics on the off-road, because I think it's across all platforms. They're buying UTVs, they might be using them for something different, but it's the same. It's a culture. I think Martelli says a lot. It's an off-road community culture. And I think, when we bring down sponsors for the first time, they can't even imagine what's going on. They've seen pictures, we have all the videos and all of that, but when you're on site, they're hooked immediately. So that's a lot of our goal, is to get that firsthand exposure for those guys coming down, for sure.
Yeah, it's like a festival-like activity now. Contingency at Baja, or even the Mint 400.
It's been that
King
way.
of the Hammers.
Yeah, it's like it's been said. It's the interaction, the ability to interact with the teams on those specific 1 or 2 day activities for contingency. And again, contingency is just one aspect of what goes on. The race course, there's viewing areas all over, organic and non-organic viewing areas that are set up across the entire peninsula, depending on the race. But it's the ability for that community to communicate, and the social media end of it. One of the posts we had at the 1,000 had over 1 million likes, not views, likes.
Wow.
So that was kind of a new threshold on where we've seen it, and we keep track of the other series pretty tight also. But that's a good testament to off-road. As much as we all are trying to push that window to get new 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 communities to come and see what we do because it's so amazing. All the categories. Part of that is we just launched that docu-series to enhance that perception and reach an impact of what at least what SCORE does, but it feeds a lot more. Surviving Baja, we launched it in September across the fast channels on Roku, Apple TV, and Tubi to start with. It's going to be coming out. We shot all the 2023 50th anniversary season. It's pretty amazing. And every episode gets better as they figured out how to tell those stories. It's all behind the scenes stuff. It's not just race coverage. And we shot all the 2024 season. So that'll be an eight part 1 hour series that the general public can see, but obviously our core groups and Motorsports is an overall community. So, we'll pick up viewers from all sorts of all the demographics and all the it's a active action sports lifestyle, I think, is where
Right.
Where it fits into.
Now, on the docuseries, have you filmed all of the episodes, or will there be another season? And the reason I'm asking is, if I'm a driver and I want to give my sponsor some visibility through
Right.
the docuseries, can I call you up and say, hey, I got a big brand here that wants to be part of this. I'd like to be included in that. Is that an option?
It was. I don't know. Now that we shot the 2024 season, I think the discussions are up on 25.
Okay.
So I can't really answer that question on the 25, but we have all the other channels to work with on that, meaning the live stream and social media, Score Journal, all of those. In our websites is very stout nowadays also.
Right on. And then, Marty, same question to you. If I want to bring a sponsor in to be part of your media, you create a lot of television, obviously, not
do.
only, linear television, but streaming. If I want to bring a sponsor in and have them included in part of that media, is that an option? And if so, how do I do that?
It is an option if it's a compelling story,
Okay.
right? And it's an option if, so in our case, we produce these film vignettes, these 3 or 4 minute beautiful pieces on Crandon, or a story of how our interaction between like the Potawatomi Indian community and Crandon and our racetrack.
Yeah.
So if a driver if he comes to me with a good piece of social media that we can access that kind of tells his story without being overtly commercial, right? Because again, we're not beholden to that sponsor necessarily, but they have to tell a good commercial. If they bring us that piece of social media, it's 1 or 2 minutes of a very well shot.
Yeah.
Some of these drivers are very, very good. They've got their own media crews. So when, let's say, a Johnny Greaves or an RJ Anderson comes and they brings us this great piece on a backstory on how they built this truck, or this crew member, we'll use it in the television show if it helps tell our story, because it's something we don't have to pay to produce, right?
Exactly.
But it has to, and at least when you're going to satellite television where it's actually televised on cable and the network's watching it too, you have to kind of make sure that it fits within the storytelling they want to do, even though you have 15 and a half hours of storytelling to do, which includes the parade. But even so, if that's the one way to do it, or what we've done now is in between races, because we used to show like, the big shot was the funny shot I was at short course racing, was showing the earth movers like prepping the track. That was what was seen either on the live stream or on television, or at the track. We have 70 monitors at the racetrack now. So now it's actually going to a live stage hosted by Chris Jacobs hosted it this year for us. So we can bring sponsors on and have conversations with them too, or drivers, and you can bring them in. But it all has to be compelling. Like it's for the production side. If you're going to go there, okay, doesn't mean we can't do that storytelling beforehand. You can. You just you talk to me or one of the producers of the show and say, hey, this is the story idea. This is the video I want to bring. What do you think? And depending on the quality of it and the care it's taken into it, where it looks like something that network television would run, which in our case we kind of strive for that. Then it's definitely an option.
Yeah, that network television still has a lot of value. People say television's dead. No, it's not. It's, that many different people consume media in many different ways. Television is one of those ways. Online is one of those ways. Magazines, digital, everything. There's many ways to reach consumers nowadays. Nothing has gone away. We've just added to the pool of options. Joe, when it comes to Slime, and maybe you want to speak on ITW's behalf or just Slime specific, the brand, what kind of media has value to you and the brand? What do you like? I know my son has created some little short vignettes for you in the past. Does that move the needle? Is that something that you recommend?
Well, our best and most successful partnerships that I can't get for some reason is a quick video cell phone testimonial, 30 seconds. Hint, hint, everybody, on a testimonial on how our product helped you win a race or get your job done on time. I don't know why we can't get these videos, but we've had a few that are right up our alley, and we will host them at slime.com. But what we really like is when AutoZone.com or O'ReillyAutoParts.com or Advance or Napa also receives them from us, likes them, and shares them at, say, AutoZone.com as well. So we've always
Nice.
said that a testimonial about our products is better if it comes from you, the race team, versus, say, myself. So that's number one. That's the best thing that's happened for us. I wanted to give a shout out, Alex, with your permission, for Auto Influencer. When we were at Apex and SEMA, Erica has started autoinfluencer.com. Check that out. We really like that because you're a race team. You use the Auto Influencer portal. You can get your content on there and reach out to, and connect to brands. So the Auto Influencer is the portal in the middle. You're the race team. You partner with Auto Influencer, and here's the brands that can monitor what you're doing pretty easily, measure what you're doing, and then boost your messaging out there. So shout out to her. She hosted us there at SEMA and Apex last November. Two quick tips. Make it easy to pay. I was just on the phone 2 days ago asking, I want to pay this partner, and I have no Venmo link, no invoice, nothing from this person. So I can't pay him. So make it easy to pay. Maybe accept credit cards. I pay with everything through our credit card. So if you send me an invoice, maybe I'll pay you with a credit card if you take a credit card. All righty.
Well, since I'm on you, Joe, we just have a couple of minutes left. Last words of advice, unless that was them, and then I'll go to Marty and Jim. Last words of advice before we head to the drag racing session.
Like I said earlier, you guys are the ultimate guinea pig to test products. And for me, one last tip, it's not just the actual physically racing, but your whole army of volunteers chasing, supporting. So maybe you're into really into some kind of nutrition, drink, some kind of beef or turkey jerky, some kind of food that you love, your favorite clothing, your gloves, your eyewear. Consider reaching out to those brands as well. You guys are the guinea pigs that'll test their products, the ultimate, you name it.
Product testing is what a lot of it's all about. Product testing, transfer technology, R&D. Marty, last words of advice. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, like you said, I've been a racer since 1990, and still race at NOR every year, and been in Baja quite a bit. But I think for me, working both sides of this, I think the two things that I would advise, if you are in the off-road space, just look around once in a while and realize what a fantastic universe this is, how special it is. And now people, thanks a lot to side-by-sides and all that, and these type of things, they're starting to understand how special it is. I think if you convey that enthusiasm, and convey the fact that, hey, this is the demographic of people coming involved with this. This is a demographic of youth that still participate, that never have a problem coming. We never have youth problems. In off-road racing hasn't never had youth problems. I think that's one. The other thing that I've learned, especially at Crane, especially with the bigger sponsors that we have, partners like, Polaris and certainly Red Bull and some others, is you have to have patience sometimes. You have to have patience. The work you're doing now may not bubble to the surface, and maybe in a year or two it might. There may be a product launch that they may want to get involved in. It's not always about the right now. The relationships you build, like we're talking about with Joe being able to call other people, or you, Alex, talking to Wilfred Eibach, who can introduce you to other people, whatever it is. That's the magic. But you just have to. It's constant. It's a constant conversation. It's a constant job to do this. It's, for promotion and sponsorships, it's not easy, and you have to work at it quite a bit. Like I said, sometimes the best things I've had are just, hey, the relationship I started now doesn't pay off until 5 years from now, and then they're there for 10 years, and that's how it works. So
That's just good life advice. That's not just good sponsorship advice. That's good life advice. Long-term relationships. That's how everything works. Jim, last word of advice. Thanks, Marty. Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
My dogs were barking. I was trying to help you guys.
It's all
Yeah,
good.
I think Marty did a good job on that. The lifespan on getting a sponsorship together is definitely patience. But I think we're at a crossroads right now. The teams have a really big, they have opportunities they never had before because of the ability for them to create the content. In our case, they're actually can help the sponsors by, if they're involved with us, they have unlimited usage of our trademarks. So all our content, all the logos that we do, all the video, anything out of Score Journal, we push that to them to help promote from their part back to their sponsors. They don't have to be giant, they could be little, which is even more important because actually the manufacturers have to go through a tedious process. Unless they're involved as a sponsor with us, they have a lot of roadblocks. So the teams can not necessarily bypass it, but take advantage of what they're allowed to do with us, and that might be the same in a couple other series.
Right on. Gentlemen, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank
We'll
you,
see you at the
Alex.
next summit.
Thank
I'll
you,
see you at the
Alex.
races.
appreciate it.
All right, George, let's pull up Megan.
Up teams.
So Megan can introduce our next guest for the drag racing sponsorship session.
All right. Thank you, Alex. And
Megan.
if Marty's still on, excuse me, I want to let Marty know I'll be up at Crandon for Labor Day weekend this year. So while I come from the drag racing world, my husband comes from the off-road racing world. And I'm so excited, never been there before. So we'll be up there for Labor Day weekend for that big race. But thank you guys. Thank you all for coming on to day 2 of the Motorsports Sponsorship Summit. So I would like to pull up Scott Hall from Moroso, Jackie from NGK Spark Plugs, which is now known as Nitira, and Jeff Stacy from Aeromotive and Waterman. So these are all people that I have known for quite a long time because they have been partners with my dad drag racing, and then my sister and I drag racing, and they are all experts at what they do. So I'm honored that they are here with me today. So to get started, let's see. I don't know, whoever wants to go first between the three of you. But to get started, what is the brand like your guys'? So Moroso, Aeromotive, NGK. Obviously, you make parts for drag racing. Are you guys trying to work with any other motorsports, or is drag racing kind of your primary focus?
I can start, Megan. This is Jeff, and I'm not sure why my video will not work. We're a conglomerate of companies. So Aeromotive obviously was based off the drag racing world. Steve Matusik, that founded the company, was a huge drag racer. But as things happened, we got pulled into more and more different genres of racing: off-road racing, street racing, circle track racing. So we've expanded as far as to do quite a bit of aircraft stuff, quite a bit of defense stuff. So anything that moves a liquid, we'll jump right into. We have fuel stations that the government uses to fuel drones. We've gotten involved in a lot of stuff. And the nice thing about that stuff is it has no impact on our core business in the automotive world, and it's very profitable. Thanks to all of our tax dollars, they don't mind spending money.
Nice. Scott, what about you?
Well, obviously, being with Moroso, we're what I'm going to call a legacy company. We've been around for close to 60 years now, starting back with Dick Moroso back in the late 60s. And the start was both drag racing and oval track racing. So we've started off with those two basics. And I could tell you, I've been there for 27 years. We probably cover everything. I mean, we've built oil pumps for circle track hydroplane boats. I mean, we've done stuff for sand rails. We've done stuff for military. We've done stuff for everything, off-road industry. So we're very diverse, and that's one of our really good parts of our business. And sometimes we're a little bit, you know, overwhelmed with what we do, but we have done a lot of everything. But basic core product that's basically been built in Connecticut. Fabrication is really our best attribute we have, but we've been known very long for the buy items and such. And so there's times where obviously the drag racing and the circle track racing has been our market, but I can tell you right now, now that I'm working in R&D now, a lot of stuff with the import market, drifting, and a lot of just these applications where a guy's going to buy a better oil pan for the street car, high performance stuff. A little bit of everything goes through our building. So I think we're very blessed to have our hands in a lot of stuff, but I really got to think that at the end of the day, you look at the name Moroso, and drag racing, old track racing is really where we come from. So, and I want
Yeah.
to say it's too bad we can't see Jeff because
I
not
know.
intelligent, but he's good looking, but we'll just have to go from there.
Yeah, he's probably the best looking one here.
No kidding.
Jackie, okay, so obviously anything with the engine takes a spark plug. But I know like you have the NTK sensors, which we cannot run in top alcohol dragster, but there are some other classes that can. So is drag racing a good market for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, we're obviously in a lot of markets, probably everything that has been touched on already, boating, a lot of motorcycle, drag racing, big in drifting. So like anything, like you said, Megan, that takes a spark plug. But, you know, last year we launched performance coil. So that was a big one that we did. And we kind of tested that at drift in the pro spec class. So a lot of those cars use that mod coil, which was exciting. And then at Apex, we launched starters and alternators. So that's it's not technically a performance product, but it is something obviously that goes in an engine. And so we're testing that out now. So yeah, we're primarily automotive, but obviously we also do stuff in like in airplanes. And then we dabble in other things like medical and stuff like that. So, but yeah, primarily automotive.
Okay, so we'll just stick with you for this next question. What value do you receive from drag racers? And is it any different than from one of the other motorsports that you work with?
I would say, I mean, obviously drag racing is super popular. And quite honestly, if you've followed us in the last couple of years, we've sort of exited being in person at those events. Like we were really big into drag racing. Like when I first started at NGK, we were at events, a lot of events with a trailer. And as with a lot of companies, I feel like that's sort of been falling back. People have been not spending as much money doing that sort of thing. But the teams are our best representation of our product anyway. So we're still present at the track. We're present in everyone's pit. So, I mean, it is quite a big value now. I mean, a lot more value than maybe we would have put on it in the past when we were present. But now I rely on those teams to talk about our product, expose the public who are at the races to our product, because we can't be there. So it's huge.
Yeah, and one thing that we love to do, because spark plugs, you know, we go through them every single pass. So we love to give the fans the used spark plugs, and especially the little kids, like they just think it's so cool. And, you know, everyone there is trying to get some used parts to take home with them. So thankfully spark plugs are very easy for them to just put in their pocket, and it's not a big tire that, you know, a kid's got.
I know. I can't believe those people lug those tires around. Those humongous tires. That's crazy.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so Scott, for you, the next question, what value do you receive from drag racers, and is it different?
Oh, it's definitely different. Drag racing as a market as a whole is a lot more end users that are building their cars. Circle track racing, off-road racing, road racing, in a lot of cases, you're having an engine builder build your engine, do a lot of the stuff for you. I'm not saying that there aren't guys out there that do their own. But from drag racing, when you start off with your 13-second, 12-second first race car, go all the way up through, you know, like you guys with your A fuel car, a lot of people typically are building their own engines and doing their own maintenance and drag racing that you won't see in other sports. Because when you're racing a circle track car, if everybody's got the same engine, you're looking for the best engine builder to build the stuff for you. So we have to go to the end user, or I'm sorry, the engine builder. In drag racing, we need to go to the end user because most of the time they're making the decision on what they want to build, and what brand they're going to buy, just because at the end of the day, most of those guys are doing their own work. And that's what's different about drag racing than any other type of motorsports that's out there. That's why you probably have the highest participation rate of any sanctioning body. And as we all know, you're not having somebody build you a 12-second engine. You're probably building it yourself because that's all you can afford to get started in the sport.
Right. And Jeff, is that the same for you guys at Aeromotive?
Yeah, quite a bit. Sorry, I disappointed everybody by
Hey,
getting my video going.
there he is.
I think the big thing with us is having a drag racer that's willing to test the product that you have conceptually come up with that works fine on a test stand. But we all know that we don't race test stands, we don't race dynos, so we have to get real world expertise. And that comes from someone that has a well-built program that you trust, because we may not be there. We may send them the product and say, hey, send back data, send back, every run you've made, tell us what you think. So that's very important. So relationships are everything for us with sponsored cars. We embrace them into the family, because I'm going to try and use them a whole lot more than they think that they're going to get used, so I can get my return on investment back tenfold. And also the drag racer, or the racer in general, is who gives us new product ideas. They tell us what they're struggling with, where they need help. Hey, if you made something that did this, this, and this, that would solve this, this, and this problem. And Steve Matusik, that founded the company, was an engineer. So we're all about solving problems. And when you are the only one that can solve that problem, A, you can charge accordingly, and B, it gives you a whole lot of confidence from the consumer that we know what we're doing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know my dad likes to take advantage of that relationship for sure, since you're so close to us. So to stick with you, Jeff, so Jackie had talked about kind of pulling back with doing activations at the track. Is there any activations that you guys do, or is it where you're just kind of relying on the teams at the track that can help you, like what Jackie was saying?
We're definitely more geared that way. We come across as a very large company, but we're really not. Our marketing department has 1.5 people in it, 2 people in it. So I'm really dependent on somebody that can do everything I need them to do on their own without me bothering them, without me having to ask for it. And we love to get people involved in activations of, especially of new product. New product is the lifeblood of any automotive aftermarket company. We're not growing our industry, unfortunately. So the only way we as manufacturers can make more money is we either have to take market share, or we have to keep coming out with new product. So there was a reason that at one time Aeromotive had 18 employees and 6 of them were engineers. And that wasn't to drive a train, that was to drive new product development. So working with the racer, getting the feedback, them willing to work with us, because we know that guy goes to a test session, makes 10 passes. If it's a car like yours, Megan, you just spent a ton of money.
Right.
Hopefully you're going there for some other reason besides testing one of my products. So without the racer, we don't have a company.
So with that, do you have any new products coming out for 2025?
Quick story. We've been bought and sold a couple times by private equity, and we're still trying to get our feet back under our ground. Yes, I have a whole bunch of new product. We consolidated 9 brands to Kansas City, so I have a lot more brands than just Aeromotive. We're slowly getting back to focusing on new product. I have some rather large electric fuel pumps, more for that street drag and drive kind of guy, the guy that does drag week or sick week, or is just flat out a street racer. We're working on a 15-gallon a minute electric pump. We have a 10-gallon right now. We're actually working on a 17-gallon electric pump that will be just as happy driving down the road as it is going down the drag strip, using technology that we've developed from our diesel side of our business, to be able to speed up and slow down the pump based on the demand that the vehicle is taking. So yeah, we're going a lot of different directions right now. like I said, it's the lifeblood of our business, and we've been pretty stagnant. We've come off the COVID high, and now we're in the COVID hangover. So we didn't have to do anything during COVID, just build product. It just flew off the shelf. Well, now we're
Yeah.
paying for that because now we got to get back to engineering new product.
Yep. Scott, what about you? Is yours more based on product sales, or do you like to do more activations?
Well, it's funny because back 20 years ago, we were on the Midway for every NHRA national event. The people that come to an NHRA national event would come to our trailer, talk to us, end up buying the product either from us or from a recommendation. You had a lot more people coming to the track that made final decisions there on what they wanted. Now you take a look at who's in the parking lot, and there's a lot more fans. So back in the day, who ran our product and what decals were on the car made a big difference. Nowadays, we are relying on the racers to promote our product through social media and such, because the people that come to the track aren't the racers anymore. The racers are actually racing, and they're watching on NHRA.tv what you guys are doing at a national event. So gone are the days where the people at the track are the consumers. The consumers are racing much like you are. But Megan, it's people like you who are the gold standard for us that promote our product, get it out there because they see where the product is and who's using it. That's doing a better job for us than us having a trailer at the track and having people come by and seeing the product, but then going onto their phone and deciding where to buy it, which is important. But obviously there's a return on investment for being at the track. That's why you see the Midway being a skeleton of what it once was. And so therefore relying on what you guys are doing social media wise, because a decal in a race car doesn't sell product anymore, but it's you guys talking about it, promoting it, showing it. That's what we're getting as far as the next group of people to say, hey, if they run that, what product are they running and why are they running it? And that's where really the best advertisement is coming from.
Yeah, good talk. So I want to ask Jackie the same question, and then I want to come back to you on that topic. So Jackie, and kind of like what Eric had asked in the chat box there. So you talked about kind of pulling out with NHRA, but I know you've done like a bunch of activations with Drift. So what has been the best activation that's given the most ROI that you guys have done?
Well, I know I'm on the drag racing portion of this, but to be honest, the best activations that we have been on the drift side. Only because it's been more of our target audience, the 18 to 24-year-olds. And a lot of those folks that come to those events are consumers of product, like they're building their own like type of car. It's not as like, I mean, when you're in drag racing, obviously everyone can't afford to build a dragster, but in drift, you can buy a Toyota Supra and try to emulate some of the people that are on the track and make your car cool and stuff like that. So in my opinion, we've had more success there. And also they also use a lot more of our product. Whereas like in a drag racing environment, they're using spark plugs, they might be using O2 sensors, but in drift, they can use a ton more of our product. So that's been better for us, but not to discount drag racing at all, because drag racing still is hugely popular, and still the teams that are there, they're still grinding and they're still talking to consumers, and they're like saying, like you said, talking to other racers. I mean, a lot of the race teams get approached by other race teams and want to know, hey, what are you doing? What products are you using? And we get the best referrals that way. So it's, like I said, not discounting any other type of racing, just for us, I think probably drift has been a little bit more successful for us, I guess.
Yeah.
As far as activating.
Yeah. Well, what are some other ways that could bring you an ROI?
Well, like you said, we're talking about content. That's big for us. We are a small marketing team as well. And I don't have, like, we don't go to a lot of the events. So I am relying on teams to share content, like when they're, filming themselves racing or talking about our product and all of those testimonial type things. I mean, that's all stuff that I need. I can't get it on my own. So that's stuff that teams, that's really valuable to me to get from a team. And then just amplifying what we're doing. I mean, obviously we have a social following, but a lot of the racers have bigger social followings or equal social followings. And so amplifying what we're talking about on your own channels, and then really genuinely speaking to the product. Like most of our, well, all of our sponsorships are folks that use the product. We don't sponsor anybody who doesn't genuinely use the product and like it. So knowing that when they're speaking about our product, that it's truthful. It's not that we gave them $10,000 to do it. They actually use it. They feel comfortable recommending it to other teams. So that's hugely popular or valuable to us.
Yeah, and I see that you guys have a brand ambassador program open
Yeah.
now, don't you?
So that was new this year, and it's been in the works for many years. Obviously we work with racers, but not everyone races. There's just people who are out on YouTube doing their thing, doing car builds and stuff like that. So we're gonna try it out. So yeah, you can rep NGK, NTK. We're just gonna pick a couple folks, and they'll be treated just like a race team, only with them doing their own thing, whether that's a car build or just fixing cars or what have you. So that's on our social if anyone's interested in that. It
Awesome.
runs till the end of January. You can apply.
Okay, perfect. And I did put a link to that in the chat box here
Awesome.
for those. So it's the Instagram post that has that information. So Scott, going back to you about content. So what is the best content or the best type of media that has value to Moroso?
So kind of going off of what Jackie said and to answer your question, our company right now is definitely gaining a lot from drifting. And I think there's one big reason why. And I'm going to use you and your family as an example. The people that are out there racing now, drifting cars, are probably first generation, the first people in their family, or maybe second to build a car. So they are influenced by what they are going to learn, what they're going to know. In the case of drag racing, when you've got, and Jeff and I could probably relate to the same engine builders just in the state of Kansas, the grandfather, the son, and now his kid are all racing in the same class or whatever. Well, that grandfather set the precedence for what the son likes and what the grandkid likes for a product, a brand name, what sticker's been on there, so it's harder to get to the third generation when grandpa's paying the bill and saying, no, we're only using XYZ oil pan and we're not going to use anything else. Where in the drifting market, you're getting new people that are maybe first generation, and that ROI is they're not interested in what some guy who's never drifted a car is telling them to buy. They're interested in what kind of content they're seeing, what they're reading in the magazines or the internet or whatever. And so the ROI, and obviously you've talked with Penelope Moroso many times, we're actually getting the most gain from people that are on Instagram, Facebook, whatever, who don't have the large amount of people following them. It's kind of that medium to smaller amount that when you work with them, they seem to have more end user input, or they kind of get more done for us, because somebody that is a professional racer that has 800,000 viewers, that's the guy that has 200,000 who's working out of his dirty garage and working his ass off to do it. That's the kind of guy you're going to be influenced by, because he's ultimately in the same position you are as the buyer. And so I think that generational thing doesn't exist in drifting. We're seeing a lot of that. We're in drag racing. I'm hoping, Megan, that when your son starts drag racing, he's going to use Moroso product because you and Randy and all that. And that's where that comes down. It's a tougher nut to crack to try to get in there. We're drifting, as Jackie stated, has a lot more expansion. You have people that grew up on cell phones and are not easily influenced, but well informed by the influence that social media does. And so there's a lot more of a direct conduit to get to them.
Yeah. And everybody nowadays is an influencer, like whether you think you are or you're not. Like if you help one friend switch brands or you want them to buy this certain product, no matter what it is, you're an influencer. You're influencing to purchase this product. So I feel like people get kind of overwhelmed with that, and they don't understand how simple it could be to be a brand ambassador and to be an influencer. It's not something negative like what everybody kind of thinks it is based on what they see from other people, but as you notice, and like one thing that I've really noticed the past 2-3 years is that people that, especially on YouTube, that are just car builders, they are getting so much more sponsorships and product from companies like Moroso that want them to just have that video or that content of them installing the oil pan on their daily driver or this project car that they have in their garage. It doesn't have to be this high horsepower race car, like what we have. And so it's way more
But Megan,
relatable.
I'll always say that you've taken the pan off the UPS truck, opened it up, cleaned it, put the gasket on it, put the oil in it, bolted it on the motor, took it off between rounds and dealt with it. And that's what I want to see. And I think all of us
Yeah.
are influenced by somebody that's using the product and can tell you firsthand, hey, this thing doesn't give me any problems, so it's a great product. Or, hey,
Mhm.
here's the advantage or disadvantage. We want to see these people telling us about the product, not about, gee, they're a great company and not having any reason why.
Yeah. So one thing that drives me nuts is when I see racers, like if they do get a new partner, they'll do a post that just says, hey, go check out Moroso. It's like that's not driving any traffic to you guys. It doesn't say anything.
They
So
could be
like
buying
what,
our quick pins and saying that. Who cares?
yeah. So like what Joe said in the last session from Slime, that you guys probably need some testimonial videos from people, from the racers, like exactly like saying this is why we chose Moroso. So okay, Jeff, handing it off to you. What type of content do you like to see, and what moves the needle for you guys?
What really moves the needle for us is when we have a racer call that maybe we don't help, that buys our product. And if they were just forward thinking enough, they video the installation of our product going on and show that our product fixed the problem they were having. I would send the guy's money back. But the racers just don't seem, they're racers, they're not marketeers. One of the things we've noticed over the last 4 or 5 years is the better the racer is getting with his video and the more polished it looks, the less it helps us. I need the
Hmm.
fly on the wall. I need the almost the, hey, we're spying on what's going on with this guy type video. It doesn't have to be any more than a cell phone video. I mean, keep it simple, stupid. I mean, the majority of our customers are not PhD doctors. They want to learn how to use it. If you got grease under your fingernails, they really don't care because it shows that you're working on it. And you don't have to have a Taj Mahal, Randy Meyer race shop. I mean, you can have, a 1980s Randy Meyer race shop.
Yeah.
So I think that's big. The drifting world has been very interesting for us because we didn't make anything small enough for the majority of their horsepower that they make at the grassroots level. Now, the Matt Fields of the worlds and people like that, we do very well selling and giving product away in that world. The one thing the drifting kids have done is they have pushed us to develop product that will work for them. Again, going back to that racer coming up with the problem, coming to us and us fixing the problem. So for a bunch of older guys, I would have never imagined we would have as many applications for cars that I didn't even know existed. So influencing those guys, some of them may turn into drag racers, some of them may go on to do other types of motorsports, catching them at that 16 to 18-year-old level when they're out doing donuts in the parking lot at the mall, thinking that they are drifting. That's where we need to catch them. So that side of our business has grown, and we'd love to embrace those kids.
Hmm. Awesome. So I want to switch topics here. So we just finished up at the PRI show, and I know we got to talk a little bit there about decks. And so one thing that we talked about quite about yesterday is decks, and how easy is it for a racer to meet you? So is at a show like at PRI the best way to meet you? And if they do give you a deck, is that something you would take the time to look at, or do you even need a deck from them?
Um, there's very few decks that make it home from PRI. I'm sorry to say. I was impressed with a couple of fellows this year that were going to PRI and I didn't leave for PRI until I think the day before PRI started. Well, they came through Kansas City on Tuesday and they stopped by the shop and said, "We know you're going to be busy at PRI, but we wanted to introduce ourselves. So here's our deck. You know, we're not asking for anything right now, but we wanted to get our foot in the door and meet you." And then at PRI, they stopped by and asked, "Hey, what new product do you have?" Didn't put a big hard push sale on me. And you know, they said that they were drag racers. They were Division 5 drag racers that were coming from Denver and driving all the way to Indy. I guess airplanes don't fly there. But I told them, I said, anytime you guys are in town, please stop by. I said, we may not do anything for 4 or 5 years, but that 6th year, I may have a need for what you are doing. And it's not about how many races you win. That's what everybody that I talk to that want to approach you and get a sponsorship, they're terrified because they haven't won. My best people out there that I get the best return on investment, they haven't won either, you know. But what they do at home, what they do in the shop, what they do for testimonials, that's like the gentleman said in the previous segment. I'd never thought that getting a testimonial could be so hard, but it is.
Yeah.
And we love testimonials, and I can go out and tell everybody how great our product is, and everybody expects me to say that because that's how I get paid. You know, when you have a grassroots, you know, say a Division 5 stock racer that wins a world championship or wins a division race, or just his car ran within a thousandth of itself 8 passes in a row, just to call out the product that he has on the car, and that's what he is attributing his success and his consistency to. That's what helps sell our product to other people.
Mm-hmm. Love that. Jackie, we'll go back to you. So do you get very many decks? I know you guys were not at PRI this year, but you did do Apex. So, and like Joe said, he only had one race team approach him at Apex. So did you guys get much traffic from teams
Yeah.
there? And did you get many decks?
A couple people at Apex, but honestly, you know, this is the first PRI that we haven't gone to, and I was sad about going, but honestly, I was not sad about missing out on all those fun people dropping off decks. To be honest, to my booth, because like I said, they don't make it home that easy either. I usually, to be honest, we have we do an application process, and you have to complete the application process. And if you want to send a deck, it's fine, but the application is pretty robust. And if you complete the application correctly, and so that's the big thing. If you complete it correctly, I don't really need a deck because it kind of just goes through everything that I need to know. One big thing like with completing an application is just, you know, making sure that your social media links are correct. We get like over 800 applications, and when I'm clicking through social media to check you out, if it goes to somewhere that's not correct, or it says the link's not working or whatever, I just pass you. I don't,
Right.
At this point, like before, I would go through 20 minutes of trying to track you down, but so many social media names are not actually their names. It's too tricky. I can't figure out who's who. So you just get dumped, and you don't want to get dumped. Yeah, you've gone through all the trouble to fill out the application. So you just want to make sure you double check it, make sure it's correct. And then honestly, like the gentleman before was saying, with, you know, having that team come and meet prior, you don't have to come to NGK to introduce yourself or anything. You can just on social media throughout the year tag us so that I can see what you're doing. Those people who, like, if they sent me a testimonial, like he said, or if they tagged me in social media leading up to the application time, I'm already seeing what you're doing. You're drawing attention to yourself. And honestly, nobody's doing that. Nobody, except for people that we're already sponsoring. So if you're doing that, you're already setting yourself ahead in the 10% of these 800 applications that I receive. And so I'm recognizing your name, like, oh, this is, you know, Jeff he does drift. I've already seen him. He's tagged me like 10 times throughout the year, and I'm seeing what you're doing. So that's making you stand out right there. So yeah, I mean, and like I do get decks. People email them. I'm more apt to look at them if they're emailed to me rather than getting them at PRI. It's just, too overwhelming there, and I have this stack of papers that
Yeah.
I just don't get a chance to go through. And at that time of the year is when we're going through all the applications anyway. So it's like at that point, we're already past where, you know, we've already accepted the applications. We're not really looking through those. So yeah, they don't get the attention they deserve. So it's better to send them earlier in the year, or like I said, just start tagging NGK in your social posts so that you're drawing attention to yourself.
Mm-hmm. And when does your applications open? Is it in September?
It's every year. It opens August and it's through November
August.
30th. So it's like 4 months. You have 4
Yeah.
months to put in an app.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember like just even being at your booth for like 10 minutes and there'll be at least 1 or 2 people asking about it. And you're like, no, it's already closed. Sorry.
Yeah. And I
So-
love when people come by and say hi, you know, so that's a great, PRI is a great opportunity to come by and just introduce yourself and, you know, say what's up.
Yeah. So with your application process, do you accept many new racers from that, or do you kind of stick with the same group?
Yeah. So obviously we have a lot of race teams that have been loyal with us for a long time. And some of them are, you know, not racing as much anymore or what have you. So we do try to churn through. I do try to sponsor like every little kid that applies. I mean, they literally need 8 spark plugs, and they work so hard. They're 8, 10 years old, 13 years old, and they're driving junior dragsters or whatever. I love sponsoring those kinds of kids because it's literally costs nothing. And they're great ambassadors for our brand.
Yeah.
So I try to do all the kids, and then like I said, anyone who sends through an application that, you know, has consistent social media, like you said, you don't have to win every race. And you do have good content, and it doesn't have to be professional content, but it has to be like genuine content, and it has to be regular, somewhat regular.
Yeah.
I look at that.
Mm-hmm. All right, Scott, let's move on to you. And Alex commented in the chat box, times have changed, decks are dead, exposure is extinct, impressions are irrelevant. What are your thoughts on that, Scott?
Well, he's definitely right. So just kind of tying off what you guys were talking about with PRI, you know, one time Rick Moroso had a sign. He took his thing where his badge was, and he flipped it around and says, "We aren't giving away any products this year." It was very simple. But
Nice.
so one of the big things
That's
about
genius.
our relationship with most racers in the last 10, 15 years is if you're already using and buying our product and you're actually helping us and giving us the feedback, it's kind of going to be our decision to say, hey, we want to work with you. We're willing to do something with you. You got to prove it first. You got to show the investment in our company. You can't come over cold turkey, not using any of our stuff, and expect us to give you something. So we need to have the relationship that's there. It's like dating. You're not going to get married on the second date. It's going to take a couple of years for us to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And Alex is right. Showing up at PRI and handing us something, you know, at the end of the day, we're at PRI to just cement the relationships, talk tech, show new products, whatever. Looking for new product, that is not a one time of the year thing. It's like Valentine's Day is not the only day you say you love your spouse. Well, PRI is not the only time you come tell us how good you are. You should be doing it throughout the year. Send us stuff without even asking for product, but let us know that you exist and that you're there. And you've got to be seen throughout the year. You got to be noticed, whether it's a personality on Street Outlaws or No Prep, or whether it's your performance at a certain race, knowing, hey, that guy uses this engine builder. And that's another thing we'll deal with to an extent, is don't forget our engine builders are the ones that are typically bringing these products to the end user often. You don't want to go and hurt that relationship, because that engine builder is ultimately the one who's getting your product onto their engine. So there's a fine line on how you're doing that. But I look at what Jackie has with the consumable product, and I think as racers, we always try to figure out how do we get a deal on the consumable product, where the parts that Jeff and I sell hopefully are 2, 3, 4, 10, 12-year products, and, you know, go from there. But there's different ways of looking at it, but you can't show up one time a year with one piece of information and expect us to see it, know about it, or whatever, or impress us in that point. It's got to be throughout the year, and that content, I think, really matters. And exactly, Jeff said it right. The winners don't get the best deals. It's the people that have the best feedback and content that really make a difference, you know? So
Yes, I love that. I love your analogy with Valentine's Day, and that's
Yes.
coming up. So make sure
Yes.
you guys get your wives some chocolates and flowers. Okay, so we've just got 5 minutes left in our session here. So Scott, we'll wrap up with you. What is some last words of advice you have for drag racers on how they could create a value for Moroso?
Well, I think the thing at the end of the day is you've got to like us as people, like our company, and be proud of our product and actually say, you know what, maybe some of these products out there, there's a shinier, cooler looking widget, but as a whole, Moroso has so many products that in general, if I have all your stuff, I know I'm under the umbrella of what that company builds. Again, a legacy company. We have so many things to offer, the phone call, the relationship, the seeing you, that it's like your favorite grocery store. You go back there because not everything's perfect, but as a whole, you want to invest in that. And for us, loyalty is shot nowadays. I think we all agree that, man, loyalty is like a breeze going by, and it's amazing how it changes. So the end user who we're really looking at, that loyalty is there. We're hoping that our brand awareness, our advertising is good, but giving us some feedback on stuff, we're thick skinned. We'll take the criticism, but we also, like Jeff said, give us the grainy cell phone video that we can put on our website. That's what matters the most. I don't need somebody reading off a teleprompter or a script to tell us how good our product is. Tell me about it. Let me see it. Tell me how it made a difference. At the end of the day, it's more about what you can do at that moment of conception of proving to the world how good this product is, because in your voice, in the sweat on your brow, at 10:30 at night, you can vouch for it on, again, the cell phone video, your girlfriend, your wife, your buddy shooting. That's going to go a long ways. Don't be a rocket scientist over this. Use common sense, and that's going to get you further than anything else.
Mm-hmm. Love it. Jeff, what about you? What's something that a drag racer do to that could create value for Aeromotive in your brands?
Because we're not just one brand, we're multiple brands. I do have some guys that have caught on to this, and we make exhaust products, we make ignition products, we make fuel system products, and I have people that I sponsor through the fuel system side of it that are doing installs on some of my other product on their own personal hot rod, maybe not their race car, but their C10 pickup truck, and they're using our LS swap kit, to put an LS in a C10, and they're helping us, the entire umbrella of companies, based off the relationship we have with Aeromotive, but they realize that we sell 9 other brands. So doing promotions for other brands, not just the brand that is paying your paycheck, is big to us. It shows me that this guy's willing to do a lot. This guy's forward thinking, or this young lady's forward thinking, and they understand that it's all about growing revenue within all brands, not just one. So thinking outside the box, there's no dumb ideas. Ask the manufacturers that you're working with, hey, I'm going to do this, this, and this. Is that something that really resonates with you guys? Do you have a use for that? Especially when you're new to it. After you've done it for 5 or 10 years, you kind of think maybe you got an idea of what works. But communicate with the manufacturer or the company that's sponsoring you on what we actually need, because sometimes we don't know what we need, and you guys come up with the great ideas, and it's like, wow, we're supposed to be professionals. Why didn't we think of this? So that's big to us, and it's all about content, good content, accurate content. If you don't understand the product that you're going to talk about, please call, because there's nothing worse than misinformation out there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Scott. So Jackie, let's move on to you to wrap it up. So what is some last words of advice you have for drag racers on how they can create value for Nitera?
Well, man, I think they kind of talked about everything that we could talk about. But like I said, I think for us, as far as spark plugs go, everyone knows we make spark plugs. But like you said, we have other brands that we need help selling with NTK and with coils and stuff like that. So and most of the folks who use spark plugs are using other products too. So just kind of translating that the quality and what you expect from NGK going into our other products, because that's exactly how we manufacture them. The same know-how and same same quality you expect from those spark plugs that you're getting so much power and performance from, that translates into other products that we have. And anything that you can do to help us sell those or bring more visibility to those products is like extremely valuable to me. And so like the content, like's been mentioned many times, help building that content and talking about those products to the people that are trusting you and following you, and you're influencing them, is like probably the biggest thing for us.
Mhm. Love it. Awesome. Thank you so much, Jackie. Thank you guys for our drag racing panel. And Alex, I think we've primed it up for you for drifting coming up next.
Right? How coincidental is that drifting is next? That was a great segue.
All the
Thank you,
drag
everyone.
racers
Megan,
have spoken highly about drifting, so you guys are set.
Yeah.
right on, right on. Megan, that was a great session. Thank you. And what Scott said is really key about first generation versus third generation. I never looked at it like that before, but drifting does reach a much younger generation, and it's also, I think, the fastest growing motorsport in grassroots racing. Obviously, there's Formula Drift, which is big, but every local community has drifting, which you don't see that with sprint cars and off-road. So the drifting community, it's interesting. We're going to get into that in detail now. So let's pull up the drift panel. We have Jim Lau, who's a co-founder of Formula Drift and also the general manager of PRI. Ed Kozin, who's the director of sales and marketing of Kenda Tires. We have Vicente Medel, who's the media and content director at Conce Wheels. And then Amanda Sorensen, a very multi-talented racer who races rally, off-road, drift, and represents the U.S. Air Force. Hey, everybody. I want to start with Jim. Jim, when you founded Formula Drift, because we're talking about sponsorships here, how did you find sponsors? What was the formula that you used to solicit brands to come and support the series so that you could raise money to even run the series?
Yeah. I mean, hi everybody. I think yeah, to start off, we just happen to have, I'm not going to credit any sort of genius on our part. I think we're just fortunate that prior to launching Formula Drift, we had great relationships. And I think that kind of goes, to the core of all the different disciplines that we're talking about. It's really about relationships. And so in previous to launching Formula Drift, we had a small boutique marketing agency, and we have done projects. And so our relationships, both with tracks as well as with manufacturers, were good. And so when we talked about launching something like this, I think part of it was sharing a vision of what we were trying to build. Part of it was also there was proven concept, because we did bring the D1 Grand Prix, which is the Japanese series, to the US the year prior, and kind of shown a little bit of success there, and how unique the audience is. So one, it was just kind of fortune and timing. Two, what differentiated us from maybe what's out there in the marketplace at that time, and then three, just really good partners that kind of took a gamble with us and came on board that first year.
Well, I tell you, I went to FD at Irwindale a few months back, and it took almost an hour just to get into the parking lot to park the car. Literally, the person I went with, he drove, and I got out of the car, walked in, and I probably spent 30 minutes hanging out with Ed from Kenda, who I'm going to pull up next, while my friend was still trying to get in and park the car. So the Formula Drift events are massive, and they're growing, and they really bring in a lot of spectators now. So when it comes to motorsports, people say, oh, motorsports are on the decline or idle. That's not true. Drifting is growing, and the enthusiast space is growing. And I believe even what Scott was alluding to in the prior session is it's because of the first generation. It reaches a younger crowd. It's a lifestyle motorsport. Ed from Kenda, you started in Drift in 2023, and I think you had 4 teams. And then last year, I believe, if I'm right, you had 8 teams. You've doubled your investment. If you had 8 teams, that represents about a quarter of the whole FD field. Why does Kenda Tires sponsor drifting?
Well, thanks for having me on, Alex. First and foremost, it's good to see you again. And you're right, you did a lot of steps at Irwindale, so it was a long day for you. But yeah,
thanks for the hospitality. That was fun.
Yeah, thanks for coming out, man. That's always a good time to see you. And actually did Long Beach too, which was really cool. So we got the front and back end of the season there. So for us with Kenda, it started basically on the grassroots side of when I first came on board to Kenda in 2019, we had a pretty good grassroots following as far as being an amateur tire of choice, just because we have a good mix of longevity. Price point speaks for itself as far as being a pretty affordable tire, and we kind of use that as an R&D exercise to make further changes to the tires we went. So we spent a lot of time in grassroots and pro-am drifting the first couple of years, and for me, just kind of getting up to speed on understanding what drift is. I come from a bit of a motorsport background and enthusiast myself, but that's more of a track driving than being drift specific. So kind of getting immersed in that. As far as like formula drift goes, that was kind of the extension for us is, we have a pretty good market penetration and consumer awareness on the grassroots and in the pro-am, the regional kind of enthusiast core audience, if you will. And for us, it was, okay, how do we get out there to a bigger audience? And, it kind of becomes what's the top level of drift? And of course, in the United States and really even globally, that's formula drift. And for us, that was an opportunity to get in, and we were working. The timing coincided with us with making some much needed changes to the tire to make it even better. And that's been kind of the core of being an R&D based development since 2023. We came on board with Formula Drift for a 2-year contract. We're in the process of finalizing that to continue competing in 2025 and beyond for the next couple of years. But yeah, that was it. We came on in 2023 to kind of learn the lay of the land and some former tire industry lives. I had worked for a couple of companies that had past involvement in Formula Drift. And so it had been a long time since I'd been to those events, but ultimately it came down to, we have the opportunity to showcase this new tire and to hopefully engage it to a broader audience that might not be totally aware of what we are and who we do. And we really wanted to kind of show about how we, as Kenda, how we punch above our weight working or competing up against some higher tier, much more expensive tire brands. And so that was it. 2023 was kind of a learning, and 2024 was getting a little bit more serious about competition and adding more drivers to ultimately try to chase that podium.
Right on. Well, tires go very well with wheels. So let's talk to a wheel company real quick. Vicente, you're the director of media and content at Kanze. You've been involved with racing a long time, and Kanze is a relatively young brand, but you know racing very well. What is it about drifting specifically that is attractive to Kanze and just brands in general? Why sponsor drifting? Oh, your microphone is off. Sorry, you're muted. We'll ask you to unmute and make it easy for you here. No. Not sure about the audio there. Let's check the audio. All right, while you're checking the audio there, Vicente, I'm going to run over to Amanda. Amanda, you said something really cool at the last summit. And this brings up something that it's across all motorsports, not just drifting. But you don't go after a marketing budget all the time. You go after a paid advertising budget instead of just the marketing budget. You do both, but the paid advertising budget is what a lot of drivers don't consider. Can you explain that? And for the drivers on the call that don't know what I'm talking about, can you help inform them that there are other ways to get money from sponsors than just marketing budgets?
Yeah, so I've worked super closely with Formula Drift and really understanding how they use their marketing and their strategy to go after their budgets. And they have this platform called Hook It, and Hook It is something that I use. It's owned by this very large platform, core software, and they basically can put ad dollars on how much views, impressions, and engagement you're getting on a post. And for me, for those of you who don't know, like I have a larger social media following, a little over 3 million total social reach. And not only am I doing deals within the motorsports industry for my racing, but I'm also doing deals as an influencer working with brands, because at the end of the day, if you look at these brands, they're just looking to find influencers to have another part of you can be an extension of their marketing team at the end of the day. So I've done a few like ad studies and like case reports where I basically look and I evaluate how much ad value I'm generating for a company. And not only are you selling an on-site asset to these brands. For example, my partner, United States Air Force, gets a branded car, and the car is something that gets engagement at the track, on the track, fans walking by in the pits. But then that on-site asset now turns into an online asset. And with the posting and sharing of the logo online, you can also generate an ad for them. So not only are you dipping into their marketing budget, but you can say, hey, you know, do you do any Facebook ads? Instead of paying Facebook $1 for a view, pay me a third of that and I'll give you 2 times the views. So you can dip into these ad buckets as well, like rather than just their marketing dollars.
And when you do that, do you go to the brand for that, or do you use their agencies? How does that work?
Actually, a lot of the times my first question I ask a brand is, do you have any agencies that you contract out for influencer stuff? For example, I'm working with a brand right now. We're talking about a partnership for next year, and I'm going to represent that brand as a racing driver. But they also have 2 other brands that are within their family that have a lot of advertising budgets, and I see that they hire influencers all the time to go do appearances at maybe a Super Bowl, or they're going to be sponsoring an event and they want to host influencers to share their experience featuring that brand. And I'll ask them, who is overseeing those budgets? And most of the time they'll say, yeah, we hire out this agency, we can put you in contact with them. So sometimes the brands have actual in-house marketing teams, which I prefer to work with, because the in-house marketing teams at the end of the day are more of a direct relationship. But then you also have the other ones that have hired out agencies, and they're just basically fulfilling the tasks that the client has given them.
Let me go to Jim for a second, and then I'm going to check Vicente, see if his audio is on. But Jim, did you work with brands or did you work with agencies when you were raising money for FD?
Yeah, you know, we did both, and I think what Amanda is talking about right now is really valuable. You know, we also kind of learned along the way as well. I mean, we're still learning, but you know, imagine this was 2004. This was now almost 21 plus years ago, right? And we were kind of learning as we go, and that is so valuable to understand, and for everybody kind of in the marketplace, and especially teams and drivers, to understand, buckets of dollars or budgets come in all forms, and everyone is very different, and you always want to treat every potential sponsor, every potential partner very differently, understanding their needs, understanding how they run their business even in terms of agencies, or do they do it in house? What type of budgets do they have? Is it is it a B2B relationship budget that has, because they're hosting dealers, they want to get their product in with a retailer or a wholesaler, and there's a B2B purpose and goal, or is it just about branding? How many times is their logo seen, or is it about some sort of representation and kind of mixed feeling about the word, but essentially influencers, but ambassadors and athletes and so forth that can talk about your product as an independent third party, versus you're the one that's always kind of lecturing about what's good about your product, what do you have to buy, things like that. And so you're looking for another voice to do that, or is it about content? And it's a media buy. So there's you could get the funding that's needed for a program, for an event, series, race team, whatever it is, in multiple ways. And I think oftentimes you kind of fall into like a little bit of tunnel vision of like this very linear path of, hey, all right, I'm just going to go to the marketing department or whoever handles sponsorship, and that's all you're going for. But if you're able to offer a lot more, there are other pockets of budgets across a company, especially the bigger ones, that you could tap into if you know what you're walking into, if you know how to connect with them and do a little bit of homework to say, all right, this brand is doing X campaign, and this is how I can connect with them. This is what I can offer them. So we've dealt with directly with marketing departments at a company. We've been kind of pushed over to agencies that represent them, and all facets of at the end of the day, right? We're just trying to raise sponsorship dollars, so we'll go approach and solicit everyone we possibly can.
That is a really interesting thing you said there about the influencers, because 21 years ago, there really wasn't an influencer per se, that at least as we view them today. We had brand ambassadors, but the whole influencer term, whether you like it or not, it is something that has evolved more recently, but it represents somebody who can speak on behalf of a brand or a cause or a project or something that is an advocate of it. And with social media lately, and the past few years, younger people who have embraced it more are now more of the influencers, where a lot of the older drivers, I think, are the brand ambassadors. Let's run over to Vicente, see if his audio's up.
You got me here?
All right, we got you now. Yeah, right on.
Rough start. Sorry, guys.
It's all good. We have this all the time. It's all good.
Yeah. No, so I think you're right. Influencer marketing is something that's become incredibly significant in the industry, whether you like it or not. It's here. We have plenty of influencers that also touch the automotive space, especially the drift scene, which is on such a rise. So speaking on behalf of Conte here and what typically they look for in regards to like a sponsorship program and how much, let's say, an influencer is targeted, or how significant of a role they play within accepting an application process of being an influencer per se. It's up there. We definitely like to prioritize recognition and diversity. It's not all about podiums. And like I said, when we briefly touched on this a little while ago, it's interesting hearing all different types of demographics that touch on sponsorships and companies per se all over, and what the requirements they typically look for. Drifting for us at Conte specifically is about style and is about consistency. So adapting and pivoting is really important. So when we're touching on influencers, and if we're looking at influencers only being able to represent a product at one capacity, it might not be something that we touch on too heavily outside of the professional scene. So when Conte itself is looking for any specific type of driver per se, whether that's grassroots or looking to get into pro-am or professional drivers, we just want diversity and the material to be able to market and utilize to help push the brand at some capacity.
The diversity is key, because when you go to a drift event, if you walk the pits, I mean, it is probably the most diverse of international, not just the cars, the brands, the people that are there, versus certain Midwest, certain Middle America racing, where it's very segmented and it's, there's an obvious culture. That diversity is international when it comes to drifting, which means that you're reaching a much larger, broader audience. So as you're promoting Kansei and then any brand, let's say through drifting, you're reaching more so than just the local community, you're reaching an international audience. How has the success of drifting affected the growth of Kansei? Because the brand is not that new. I want to say 7 years old, 8 years old. It's a relatively young brand, but the presence is enormous.
Correct. So thank you for saying that. I mean, like I said, I think Kansei, especially speaking on behalf of Chris Beck, who is the wheel designer and the founder of Kansei Wheels, he takes a lot of pride in the community of drifting. Like, that's why he was so inspired to start the brand overall. So it's directly reflected on like the grittiness and the raw driving of drifting. Like, he wants to embrace that and follow through with that. So you're right. Kansei is not necessarily a newer brand, but not an old one either. They just came out with a new wheel, the 7, which signifies the 7th year in business for Kansei. So yeah, it's an interesting thing, like broadly talking about how much drifting influences that brand. But we get a bunch of different motorsports in general, primarily based off of drifting. However, drifting all over, and being that it is so diverse, is great for the brand, because we want to stick with the drifting and the grassroots and being able to kind of touch on that sport, considering it's why the brand was started and curated.
Ed, is that the same with Kenda? I'm assuming that Tires and Wheels have very similar objectives when it comes to marketing through racing. Kenda also relatively new to the drift scene. You've seen enormous growth, I know, at least with your teams and with sales. Are you reaching an international audience, and is that part of the goal of sponsoring drift?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, for us too, we started off obviously with the United States. I mean, Kenda, our business units are segmented as far as Asia, Europe, and North America. And Europe is a little bit late to the scene. Kenda is one of the few manufacturers that makes things other than just automotive tires. They have bicycle power sports and all that stuff. But as far as like Europe specifically too, I mean, we had a presence. I mean, if you go back to probably 2014, 2015, it predates me, but we have people that even to this day, I still get messages and tagged on social where people are saying, hey, you know, I ran at Ibisu and over in Japan, you know, and running and Kendas. I mean, we were doing that, you know, with a much earlier, not as good tire back in the day. But yeah, it's definitely been an R&D exercise. And as the tire strengthens, I mean, over the last 2 years now, we've expanded that program over to Europe, where we've established a European sales office. And timing is everything as far as that goes too, because a couple of years ago, it was at Formula Drift announcement at SEMA, and I happened to be at the back of the room, and Frederick Osbo, who was a three-time Formula Drift champion, and his wife, Hunter Taylor, we were both at the back of the room, and we are kind of talking. And Frederick, he came up and introduced me. He's like, "Hey, I'm Frederick." I'm like, "Dude, I know who you are." You know, and we were talking, and his wife was, you know, who Hunter does drifting over in Europe, and she was looking for a tire partner, and that they were not as segmented. And I mentioned that too because she has Kansei as her wheel company of choice too. And so it's been that as we've gotten more established in more visual awareness and performance awareness with Formula Drift in the States, that's also converted over to, there's definitely more European interest as well. And for us too, that's an avenue to make sure we're selling tires. And over in Europe too, it's also just because of the geography, the distribution is a little different. Each specific tire distributor usually has territory over that particular country, just because of the population. And so we started with a focus in Norway, and that's grown to Europe and Germany and England and UK. So, I mean, there's definitely awareness, and it's very much growing. So yeah, it definitely takes on an international presence for us, but the core of it kind of started here in the States.
Does the value of sponsoring this series and drivers in the series, is that because of the visibility through the media, or is that because of the activation at the track? Because your pit presence is quite massive, and there's a lot of people that stop by the pit. If companies do it right, then activating at the pits can be most of the marketing, as opposed to relying just on the media that's created through the series. How much of the value is media versus word of mouth, face-to-face marketing, in-person marketing?
Great question. It's for us, it's the media access, it means a lot because we're trying to, for us, just as much as it's consumer awareness, we're also doing that from a B2B standpoint as well too. So we've done strategic partnerships, not just specific to drift. I mean, we've done like what Vicente was mentioning, worked with Chris Sempic on some product placements. So some of their display vehicles have had Kenda when they're doing their activation at drift events. And just other product placements. So, there's definitely a partnership there that, again, for business to, from a B2B standpoint, I've had some good introductions with the people that are responsible for the sponsorships for Amanda and Brandon Sorensen with the United States Air Force, just great people. And, we're always looking to collaborate with other brands as well, because, that's one of those things where the rising tide lifts all boats. So, that helps to kind of extend some dollars as well. So just as much as it's consumer awareness, a lot of that for us too, even at our level still is about trying to bring other awareness and collaborations.
And then same thing with you, Vicente. I'm assuming it's going to be similar to the B2B, the content that you get created from the series in your teams, and then also on-site activation in the pits. Where is the value? I know you're in the media side, but on the pit side and the activation side, face-to-face with consumers, is that also a large part of the value?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely going to be a little bit biased, basing it off of the fact that I prioritize visual media to help develop a strategy for, let's say, brand ad campaigns or new wheel product placement. But you're right, absolutely. Activation or working with teams that are on site and having that appearance with people and consumers is significant. It's very important. We like to get out to shows. We like to be able to show off the wheel. We like to be able to interact with people. Personally, I think Kansei leans more towards utilizing ad spend when it comes to marketing, whether it's visual media or anything like that. Not that we're discrediting being on site and working with consumers and talking and getting information from the community, Conte stands out the most when it comes to being able to showcase why the brand is so significant visually, why the brand stands out so much to drivers and possible consumers, the durability of the wheel, the style of the wheel, and why you want to run it. That to us is so hugely important because, you know, we want to be a brand that showcases the gritty, raw aspects of driving, whether that's, you know, from A to B or grassroots driving, pro-am, pro driving. Like, that's so important to us, and being able to showcase that visually is something that we're very cognizant about and prioritize heavily.
Right on. And then Amanda, let's go to you. When you and I were talking at Formula Drift at Irwindale, you know, we had to actually go into your rig in the back, away from all the people, because every 30 seconds we're trying to talk out front, someone came and wanted an autograph, or a photograph, I should say. You're inundated with spectators constantly wanting photographs. How much of what you do for the Air Force relies on that spectator engagement versus the actual race itself and getting a podium versus creating media or being an influencer online through your social channels?
I think, well, for the Air Force specifically, this comes down to what I talked about earlier, and that just comes with like having the conversation with the brand to understand what their marketing goal is at the end of the day. Because with the Air Force, for example, not this past year, but the previous year, I was hired to drive by Chip Ganassi in the Extreme Series. I only attended 2 pro spec events within the whole 8 rounds of Formula Drift. I still did 250 million impressions for the United States Air Force logo.
Wow.
In the whole entire year, which generated around $2.4 million of ad value. They come back and look at that and they say, this is exactly what we want. But I have other partners that are like, we want you to be more involved with working on the cars. We want you to be more involved with being like an actual athlete and representing the driving standpoint. So I think it kind of comes down to understanding what the brand wants. For me, I've aligned myself with the brand who is looking for something that I can deliver best. And that's the brand awareness. Because if you look at it from a general perspective, Air Force is really just looking to have that influence. So it's something that comes first to mind when the millennial is deciding what kind of job path they want to choose. So I think it also depends. It's harder for me to find sponsorship for my brother than it is for myself, just because there's less to offer. However, now, like, I've been involved a lot with Connor Shanahan's marketing and how it works and doing a lot of stuff for him on the back end. And it's crazy because he has over 4 drift championships, is so well known and respected in the sport that I can go up to literally any brand and get him signed immediately. Whereas like with my brother, I'm walking up and, you know, Brandon's still new in the scene. He's building a name for himself and he doesn't have that resume to build and to represent for the brand. So I think it really just comes down to understanding what exactly the brand wants, you know, like, and it also kind of comes down to the driver. I think another thing too is it's very overlooked, and I have a lot of people come up to me, like other drivers, making comments like, you know, like, it's so easy for you to get sponsorship because of the following. But in my opinion, if you go and you begin to build your personal brand and you have 4,000 followers that are core auto enthusiasts, and maybe all of them are drift related. If I go to a brand and say, hey, if your target demographic is drifting, I can guarantee you 4,000 people that are going to be interested in possibly buying your product versus the 1.7 million on Instagram that I have no idea if they're auto enthusiasts or if they're just following me because I'm a girl. So it's like you can kind of fluctuate and find what the brand is looking for, but also you don't need to have a massive following. You need to have the following that the audience is more of the brand's demographic that they're looking for.
And then I want to ask for the drivers on the call who are interested in finding sponsors but don't know how. You've been very successful at securing sponsorships. What are some tricks and tips and advice that you have on finding or meeting and signing a sponsor? What's the best approach to try to bring a company on board your program?
I think that there's a few different ways to go about it. For one, I think finding credibility. I think that that's very important. When you can show that your team's credible or you as an individual is credible, and that could just be within the series that you're racing in, within some sort of past case study that you can put up or pull up that you've done for a brand, something to show that, you know, you can represent the brand to deliver what they want, or that you're credible within the industry. That's one of them. Another one I would say is understanding what the brand wants. It's not all about content, in my opinion. I talk to some brands and they say, we want to do a social media campaign to generate leads. We want names, emails, and phone numbers. We don't care about how many views, we care about how many leads we get. Because if I get 1 million views but no names at the end of the day, how are they going to sell a product? So that's another thing to kind of not overlook, but understanding, like, can I possibly set up, say, for example, some drivers, I know that they have like their wife out there selling merchandise. Every customer that comes in has to put in their credit card and their first and last name. Is that something that could be useful for the brand? Could you give them those 200 sales that you got yourself, So lead generation, brand awareness, like I said, but just understanding, like finding creative ways to just really catch their eye. And I think the third thing is longevity in sport. I was drinking out of a fire hose when I first started blowing up on social media. I had no idea where to sell myself as far as like how much an Instagram post is. And fortunately, like I literally asked around, like I'm good friends with like Alex Choi and, people within the automotive industry that are influencers. And I'm like, how much are you selling an Instagram post for? And they're anywhere from 10 to 60,000. And I can tell you that like I've gotten 60,000 for an Instagram post. It's crazy with what some of these brands want. And then I turn around and I'm like, hey, can you sponsor my whole entire team? I'll give you a logo and this, and I'll generate leads. And they're like 10,000. And I'm like, excuse me? Like, that doesn't even make sense. So like, it's crazy to see where the industry is and how the difference can be between both of them. But, like just really understanding what the brand wants is something that I think is super important, and having relationships. I feel like I would reach out to a brand and it's like the people on social media know me, the people like I have partners and relationships and a big network when it comes to the actual influencer side of things, but I didn't really have a big network in the drifting community. So for example, I go up to the guy at K&N and I'm like, hey, I'd like to partner. It was 5 years of me talking to the guy at K&N before he came back at a decent number that I was like, okay, this could be reasonable. So I think having longevity and just building your network, talking to everyone is something that's super, super important.
Amen to that. And we covered a lot of that yesterday as well on the networking session. It is long-term relationships are how you grow. I say it a lot. It's not the first year of a sponsorship where you make your money. Year one is not much. It's years 5, 10, 20. This is where the money comes in.
But also I would say like even leaning into your opportunities around you. If it wasn't for Formula Drift offering to help me with partnership, I would not be where I was at. Formula Drift brought me my first partner. They brought me the United States Air Force. From there, I sold it and I did my own thing with it. But, like looking at the opportunities around you, a lot of these series have big networks. All you have to do is just be involved and be in there. So like, I think, finding the talent around you who can help utilize that. I would never be like, telling somebody I'm not going to give them my time when they ask me questions about sponsorship, because I think that the network around you is honestly your biggest opportunity.
And like you said, Formula Drift brought you the Air Force. Partnering with the series is a very smart idea. Let's go to Jim, since he started Formula Drift, but now with PRI, you do much more than just large sanctioning bodies and series. You're very active with grassroots drifting and regional drifting, and you're a big advocate and a promoter of all drifting, not just Formula Drift. Let's address for a minute the grassroots drifters on the call and the regional drifting. How do those teams, maybe without the national television visibility, but the local visibility, how do they find sponsors? And what resources, maybe through PRI or other means, can they use to try to find sponsorships?
Yeah, well, there's a lot there. I'd say if I could just one step back is to Amanda's point, it's not to elaborate more. It's not like, oh, Formula Drift said, hey, Amanda, we've got a sponsor for you, but it's also, the proactiveness between drivers and the series that they compete in, and understanding how to help each other, because the series is probably also looking at every team that's competing there. And it's like, how did they get that brand because that would be really good for the series. And then vice versa, the series, it has it's kind of like a triangle, right? Like you kind of need presence for a brand marketing. And you guys can challenge me, but I kind of look at it, it's there's like this ecosystem of things. The just a brand or a manufacturer in the series isn't enough. That brand kind of needs that, again, that third party independent voice to speak on behalf of that brand. Just those two alone isn't going to be successful. Kind of there's a multiple prong, however you guys want to draw it out. And so for Formula Drift or for the series, in order for the brand to be successful, the series can deliver so much, but that brand also needs one or two or multiple voices, ambassadors that are flying the flag on site as well. And so in order for the series to know who to send some of these brands to, that interaction is valuable, right? Like we talked about that tool, Hook It. There's a lot of tools that are out there that, one, the series provides, or two, that's already out there in the marketplace. Again, it's about people's kind of proactiveness. When we talk about Hook It, Formula Drift invested in that years and years ago, but the kind of the open rate of drivers looking at the metrics and the analytics and the value of that information there was very little. And it kind of puts a smile on my face, like, Amanda keeps referring to that, because that's really valuable. And whether in the understanding and being able to access that type of the information, and again, being proactive to say, what do you have to offer me, series? All right, now how can I take that? And then also mutually, what can I offer you, the series, that you don't have? And that's how you kind of break in. So even when you ask about grassroots on a smaller level, I mean, I get it, right? Like sometimes the deals are smaller, the dollar amounts are smaller, but you gotta start somewhere. There with technology now, there are tons of tools available that are accessible to you. Even creating a presentation on like Canva or something, like you can't ever say that, oh, I don't have the resources to provide a great presence to initiate that relationship, to make that attempt, to start that. It relies on your effort. So yes, I get it. When you're starting out, the time you put in is going to be a lot more to kind of open those doors and to establish that first contact, to be able to even have a conversation. But again, I think the proactiveness, persistence of utilizing those tools, and when you talk about like PRI, I think getting yourself out there is valuable, whether it's in a trade show environment like PRI or like the SEMA show, or just getting to a race. And you don't have to be competing in a race to be at a race. There are conferences and educational opportunities like this. Like, you just, again, have to be proactive and persistent and be willing to kind of put in the time to be able to get the ball rolling. That's the hardest part. I get it. Getting that first domino to fall, that is definitely the hardest part. But the tools are there for you to be able to knock that first domino over.
I agree with that there's no excuse anymore for not having the information or resources. We have unlimited resources in our pocket nowadays, especially with AI. Whether you use Claude or ChatGPT, there's no reason to use lack of information as an excuse or lack of resources. Ed, I'm going to run over to you real quick, because last time we talked, you were speaking about research and development being one of the big benefits of being in motorsports in general, because it allows you to produce better products, more tires. Let's talk about that for a second. For drivers on the call looking for sponsors, how can they utilize the racing and the series that they're in to perhaps improve the technologies and products so that it transfers to consumer products of the brands that they represent?
Yeah, and that's a fantastic question. Really, as far as the R&D side of things too, I mean, the when you think about tires specifically, it's the highest level of abuse that you can pretty much throw at a tire in the shortest amount of time possible, and that really has for us too kind of taken it like, okay, well, if we don't want to just participate and throw a lot of money into motorsports, specifically in FD. We want to really be competitive, and the progression of our tire the last 2 years has really been a direct result of that. And so for anybody that's competing and looking for sponsors, I mean, that's a fantastic angle, is, the R&D approach, or really, like Amanda and Jim both has said, just fantastic information there, that really it kind of comes down to, how do you, when you approach a company, what are you doing to offer that additional value? So there's nothing wrong with putting that out there, like, hey, if whether it's, just pick any kind of product that goes into the vehicle, whether tires or fluids or whatever that may be, there's always an opportunity to ask, is this a suitable R&D exercise for you, or what are you looking to get out of it? And even for brands that might be doing marketing, using it as a marketing exercise to build visibility to that audience, that core audience, it can go beyond that. And I think that's a conversation that nobody really brings up too much. I mean, before we were in FD, when we were competing at a lower, more of a grassroots or regional pro-am type level, I think there's one driver that stands out that, excuse me, that worked with us at the time to do that. And he was actually going and beyond that. It really just value is the biggest word I want to throw out there. Like they just said, is that it really comes down to what can you position or what can you offer that company might not be thinking about. You're thinking of marketing, and like Amanda said, that's a whole different, like the R&D might even be a separate bucket of money that comes from, or how do you're creating value by saying, hey, I can be your test dummy, if you will, to do that, to help make that product better. And so that's definitely one approach. But yeah, as far as the value goes too, I think there's one other thing I wanted to bring up too on this particular call, is that even with tires, it's such a high consumable, and in drift, it's mostly the largest cost center outside of the actual transportation and the participation aspect of that. And I mean, to be clear and transparent, I mean, there's drivers in FD right now, even that we're having these conversations for 2025 backing, and we're going to be announcing some driver changes and some lineup changes here in the coming weeks. But yeah, at that FD level, but even then at the pro level, I mean, there's still drivers that are approaching me that are trying to find a foot in the door and looking for a tire deal this year, and we're like, sorry, we're already set for the year. And it's a hard conversation to have, because if you're reliant just on the tires with that high cost level, I mean, it only goes so far, and we can only do so much with the budget that we have, and it's a generous budget. Don't get me wrong. But ultimately, it comes down to, even at that high level of motorsports, there's drivers that I think, even at FD might be a little sidelined this year with the inability to participate or afford to have to buy the tires out of pocket. I mean, not everybody that's in FD has that fully backed tire deal. And so I think you're going to, at that high level, you need to be aware that even at the pro level, and even NASCAR teams pay for tires. I mean, it's just so don't mistake that just because you're an FD pro that you automatically have a tire deal. The piece of advice I would give people to walk away from with that is that I think you need to be having conversations with companies across the board. And one example that comes to mind too, at a pro-am, mid-level, I started working with one driver this past year who does not have that pro FD aspiration. I mean, he wants to compete and be seen, but he was able to line up a deal with a firearms manufacturer, and the discussion at a pretty high level, and it really came down to the attraction for them was the audience. Car enthusiasts and gun people often go hand in hand, and so it came for them. It's like, hey, the opportunity of, we have a cool car, we can display this, we'll come out, we'll do ride and drives, we'll take your people out and we'll do demos, and you're doing that activation with that partner. And for us, it kind of became, okay, so obviously you need tires. What's the tie-in for us? And the tie-in is, number one, you get an additional set of media that's not just Formula Drift. We're trying to tell a story top down or bottom up even. And so we're trying to tell that story. So we have that capability. But then again, that the in turn is, hey, we're getting extra media, extra eyes, extra exposure. So, I would always say, when you're trying to create value, think outside the box. It's not just car parts and energy drinks. It's, what are these other companies, and how can you provide that value to them to get a different set of eyes on that audience? Like Amanda's saying, you're talking with different companies and doing that value add. And then in turn, I mean, even for this gentleman here that we're backing, I said, okay, are we talking money? We're talking tires, we're talking both. And he's like, I don't even want money. I just need tires. And so the trade-off there is, in addition to that, he asked the key question was, well, what do you need from me? And I thought about it. I'm like, what I can really use from you is if we take all this professionally produced or professionally captured content, this video content that we're getting at FD on and off the track, he's one of his side things is, he's a video editor, and like, okay, so we can use you for the video content. You can be the guy that puts together the media reels. So on the Kenda Motorsports channel, a lot of that stuff was created and crafted from him, just from the raw data.
Nice.
And in turn, yeah, I mean, it's tires. And for us, I mean, tires are cheaper than writing you a big check. I'll be honest. So yeah, I would just encourage that. I mean, it's, when you think about things like that, like making the product better, extra value that you can bring to the table in terms of your own skill sets, or, just that different audience. I mean, those are always the conversations to have, and always be talking to companies that are outside the box, as far as bringing them into the series and putting new eyes on it.
Excellent. That was some great advice. I particularly love the highest amount of use in the shortest amount of time. That was a great quote.
So true.
Since you mentioned Amanda, let's go to Amanda. Amanda, we just have a few seconds left. Last words of advice, then I'll go to Vicente and close with Jim.
I would have to say one thing that's for sure when I am speaking to like other drivers is like, if you look at business, like, you have the Industrial Revolution, you have high rise of corporations, and now you have the personal brands. Personal brands can be so valuable. And I think that, there's so many times where I was just like, I'm over social media. Like, and here I am bawling my eyes out because TikTok might be deleted now. It's like, it's crazy because at the end of the day, personal brand is where we're at with this, like, within, I would say, if you're a millennial and you're like in the entrepreneur status, like, personal branding is very, very important. And it's also like where it is. The world's at your fingertips, and like, you literally can make it, and you can explain and share your story however you want to, whether that benefits brands or you do it for yourself. I think that the more you decide to just really be true to yourself online and show the story, the good things, the bad things, like, I literally deleted my whole YouTube channel because I hated it. And now I'm regretting it. And I'm like, I watch these other videos and I'm like, I had so many subscribers. Why did I do that? And here I am at square one again, doing it again. But like, I watched back and I was so hard on myself on posting those videos. But at the end of the day, like, if they want to follow you, they follow you. If they don't, they don't. It doesn't matter. But don't get caught up in the numbers and really just do it for yourself, I would have to say.
Personal branding. It's hard to tell a story unless you have a personal brand. Thank you, Amanda. That's great. Vicente, last words of advice.
Yeah, looking at it from a brand perspective and not let's say a driver or someone that's looking to obtain a sponsorship, but from a brand's perspective, you could look at as what Jim is saying is use the tools that were given to you. There's so many ways that you could diversify a pitch deck or showcase what you're really about, and touching what Amanda's saying about personal branding. Like, you have the tools available to you to be able to propose something or send out an email that's correct, that's formatted correct, to get you eyes on a possibility of even a sponsorship. And touching on what Ed's saying, yeah, think outside the box. I mean, it's so important. We get tons and tons of sponsorship requests regarding like, hey, like, I'm about to start driving, like, give me wheels. And to us, it's almost as if like we don't not consider possibilities like that, but we don't consider them as highly as someone that's giving us a pitch deck with a list of events that's coming correct, and being like, hey, these are the events that we're doing, these are the media opportunities we're going to give you, these are the media outlets we're going to give you, and how you could utilize them. Stuff like that is so important to us on a branding level, just because Conte specifically looks for more ways or more opportunities entirely to showcase the amazing drivers that are on the wheels, or the amazing opportunities and events that they attend. Stuff like that is so important. So yeah, it's being relevant and showcasing why you're involved with Conce, and not more so the idea of like, this brand gave me product and I'm gonna run it. Like, that to us is just a major red flag. Like, we want to be able to utilize the material and showcase the people that we have curated a team that represents Conce and what they stand for. That's something that we take a lot of pride in, being like, knowing that the drivers that we do work with know that they want to run Pensé and give us the proper feedback to make wheels better or media better or the brand to look better. Like stuff like that it goes so far, and we can't stress stuff like that enough, truthfully.
Excellent. Thank you, Vicente. I appreciate
Yeah.
that. Jim, let's close. Last words of advice to drifters on the call seeking sponsorship.
Yeah, I mean, drifters or anyone really, right? I think it's a great bridge from what everybody's saying is really do your homework. You know, that pitch is only a sliver in time. There's, you know, hopefully years after you've closed the deal, but there's also, you know, not years hopefully, but hours getting to that moment. So learning, preparing, even learning about just general sports business and what industries are doing and things like that. I mean, we talk about things like, you know, right now, like influencer marketing and people think it's, you know, a completely unique thing. But if you, and obviously I'm dating myself, and this is why I say kind of learn kind of some historical information. If you look back, you know, 20, 30 years ago, action sports was already doing it. If you opened up the pages of Surfer magazine, you flip through the back, it was like they had exposure rankings, which surfers are getting the most exposure.
I forgot about that. You're right.
Right? It's
that.
like
Yeah,
snowboarder and
exposure
surfer
ratings.
had that, where it's like, hey, who got in the most photos in magazine, the most ads. There's exposure rankings, and that's kind of the genesis of what Hook is doing. And so if you even spend a little bit of time like, oh, why did they do that? When did they do that? You know, the Shaun Whites and the, you know, Ryan Shecklers and whatever, they're making videos and they're selling, you know, DVDs and whatever. And it was done. A version of what's happening now was done. And how do you learn from that? What can you take from that? Or maybe are you going to be the first to see that was done in sprint car racing or in go-karting or in, you know, baseball, that can be brought, that's a fresh look, that's a fresh pitch, that's a fresh idea. So, you know, yeah, just a lot of, just spend the time to do the homework, so that when you get the opportunity, get the time, get the chance to kind of make the pitch to craft your deck or whatever it is, you've done the homework, to prepare yourself to talk about what you want to talk about. And then obviously once you hopefully get the deal, the retention part is, you know, invaluable to maintain and keep those relationships.
Right on. Well, thank you, Jim. Thank you, everybody, on the panel. And speaking of sprint car racing, that's where we're going next. Let's pull up our sprint car panel. All right, I see they're coming up here. We have some big hitters here. We have Jason Smith, who's the president of USAC Racing. We have J.R. Tweed, who's the president of K1 Race Gear, and Brian Brown, who's the president of Brian Brown Racing, a multi-time sprint car champion. So I'm going to start real quick with JR, because JR, last time we were on one of these sponsorship summits, you were talking about this racer who I had not met yet at that time, who did an outstanding job. And well, now he's on the call with us. Why do you sponsor Brian Brown? What did he do that was so special? How did he get your attention? What landed him to sponsorship with K1 Race Gear? Because drivers on the call want to know what they can do to copy his success.
Yeah, thanks for having us on, Alex. Can you hear me okay? I just want to test on that real quick.
Yes, you're good. You're good.
Yeah, so, I mean, Brian doesn't need me to blow his head up, but I'm going to a little bit here. You guys are all actually in for a bit of a, how would I say it? You're lucky to have him here, and I think you guys should really pay attention to him a lot. There's a lot of guys that we could have brought on here in sprint car racing, but Brian actually owns and operates in a pretty unique space with Elite Company, being one of the only professional drivers at a very high level that owns and operates and races probably in the top 10, top 15 of every series that he competes in, and multiple time champion. I mean, you guys can start thinking about it, but those guys are very rare in this day and age. You know, that John Force was a guy that popped up in my head when I was thinking about it earlier, and he's not anymore, obviously, after last year. But I mean, you know, I guess Denny Hamlin maybe, and Brad Keselowski at NASCAR, but it's a very, very small list of Elite Company. And there's a reason behind that, you know, and Brian will dive into it a little bit more, but, you know, Casey's FVP, Impact Signs, K1 Race Gear, Weld Wheels. I mean, these are guys that not only have had transformative partnerships that went beyond any traditional advertising methods with Brian, but they've also been with him for 15 to 20 years. Brian doesn't, and I'm not speaking as his manager, just as somebody who I have a very close relationship with him as well. But Brian doesn't have to seek out a whole lot of sponsorship anymore these days. I mean, he still obviously gets up and down the road. And by the way, that up and down the road for Brian is about 80 to 85 races a year. I mean, when you're talking about the Outlaws and high limit racing, it's a grueling grind. And to be able to put, that hauler, that team, those team members and sponsors on the road with them year in and year out, and have that kind of success is it speaks to what we're talking about here. So, Brian, just to give you a short story, and you and I've talked about it a little bit, Alex, was very unique in his approach. And I only say unique because it's, one of the very few people that have done it, but I wish that more people did it exactly the way Brian did it. He could write the blueprint for pretty much any racer and any team looking for sponsorship. I was at the Knoxville Nationals in, I don't know, Brian and I've known each other and of each other for 15, 20 years, but we had not done business yet together. And I was an up and coming brand. And Brian walked up to me and we were standing next to his hauler, and at Knoxville, you got a back gate there at turn 4 where all the haulers stage before they pull into the infield. And he just hopped off, came over, and like Brian does, just chatty, and we were BSing a little bit, and he just said to me, he said, what would move the needle for your brand? How could I do that? And this is not somebody who was wearing K1 at the time. He hadn't expressed any interest. He just said, how could I move the needle for your brand? And I was like, wow, that's an approach that not a lot of people come up. Normally it's a deck, it's a, hey, I'm looking for sponsorship. We're looking for, hey, you know how expensive this is. We all know. So that's a great starting point. And I happen to be looking at his rig, which if anybody in sprint car has ever seen Brian's rig, it's one of the cleanest, one of the nicest, most well-placed sponsorship advertisements rolling down the road. And I saw a distributor on the side of his car that I'd known of for a long time, was Smiley's Racing Products. And I said, I'd like to get my product into, I'm looking for distribution. I want to get my product into Smiley's and Summit and Buckeye and some of these other ones. And he said, give me a minute. That was all he said to me. He said, just give me a minute. About a half hour later, he come back with Matthew Roan and Tom Lawrence from Smiley's. And he walked into my trailer and he said, you guys sit down and figure out how to make this thing a go. Never asked me for anything. And within the next week, I think I got a $150,000 to $200,000 purchase order from those guys, and we were off and running. And of course, Brian followed that up with, okay, I need 5 suits and 5 pair of gloves. But my point is that, we talk about this a bit, Alex, is that the most important thing, and I preach this on these seminars and anytime I get a chance to talk to drivers or team, is leverage. You've got leverage that you don't know about, and it might seem an unconventional route, but it's something that I think every racer really needs to pay attention to, is that, you have partners that you may not know I need, or that one of your other brands needs. And Brian is an absolute master at that. He can teach a master class on it. You'll often see him at Knoxville or I-70 or at Eldora grabbing some of his sponsors and taking them up into the booth and introducing them to one of his wheel guys and saying, hey, your shirts don't look that great this year. You should call JR and talk to him about making you guys new team apparel. It's not uncommon with Brian. That's what he does when he's not in the race car. So that really, he stands at the upper, at the highest level regard to sponsorship with K1, and I'm sure with the rest of his brands, because and I can tell you his brands almost by memory because I put him on his suits and his apparel every single year. They don't change, Alex and crew here. So, it speaks a little bit to what Brian's all about.
Well, let's go to Brian. Perfect segue here. And I'm real curious, Brian, do you use the same approach with all your sponsors? I mean, obviously putting them together so they can generate business and sales. That's what brands want from sponsorship. It sounds like you've mastered the art of it, at least with K1. And if you've had long-term relationships like that, it sounds like with all the brands. what is it that you do that keeps these brands long term and even secures them in the first place?
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, you're good.
Yep. Gosh, JR, you made me look like King Kong here. I don't even know what I can even, these guys are gonna be like, God, this guy's not as good as you said he was. But yeah, I think for me, the easiest way to move the needle always is connect the dots, B2B. It's just a quick way to, there's somebody within your inner circle or somebody that knows somebody within your inner circle that that with JR is a perfect segue. I could have came up and said, "Hey, JR, I'd like to get 5 free suits and gloves and uniforms, and I'll put it on, and hopefully all the young drivers see me wear it when we win or whatnot, and let's just pray together here. We'll sell some suits like everyone else." Or you can take a different approach and say, "Okay, who do I know?" Walking up to JR and asking them that question that he said of how can we push the needle. I knew that at Smiley's Racing Products, they sell uniforms, gloves, shoes, or whatever. So, and I have a great relationship with Tom, who owns Smiley's. So I knew going up to JR and asking that question, I knew the best bet for us to say, okay, gosh, Brian is who we want to work with, and things like that of having a Smiley's. So yeah, connecting B2B is always my first go-to. If I have someone that is hauling product, I have my first ever partner, Ditsfield Transfer. That's a trucking company. Is there any way to connect the dots? So I always look at the B2B first. And sometimes you don't, obviously there's no B2B connection. And then you look at, okay, what does this, I think in racing, and as you own your own teams and as you deal with these sponsors, on a day-to-day basis, we have over 50 partners on our team. You have to wear 50 different hats. Okay, what does really K1, for example, what do they care about the decal on the car? Probably not. That's not probably JR's number one request. Do they care about entertaining clients at the races? That's probably not in JR's top 2 or 3. He could probably care less about the decal on the car, but his thing is, how can we push the needle and get distribution? Instead of trying to sell a uniform at a time, how can we sell 100 at a time, 100 gloves at a time? Because if I get out and do my job and sell uniforms, maybe I'll sell 8 or 10, 15 uniforms per year, which is good. But to do it with a distribution level, that's the way I wanted to go with that particular partnership. And I think that wearing the 50 different hats is, you have to learn what the hot button is on your partner.
Yeah,
what do they like? Do they want to bring customers to the race? Do they want to entertain them that way? Do they want the decal? Do they want to be a silent partner and just want to help you because they like who you are and don't want their name mentioned? So I think that's the thing about it is sometimes I always say the saying, you got to slow down to go faster. And I look at that in marketing too. You have to slow down and really learn about what the company is looking for as a whole, as a partnership, rather than just telling them what you want, which is basically, I want free uniforms. So I didn't come from a wealthy family, and I look at these things as I'm looking for 1 year. I'm not looking for 1 year sponsors. I'm looking for 15-year partners.
Nice.
And the only way to secure that every single year is when new marketing people come in and new VPs and all this thing, and they list out all the people on their desk of this is who our athletes are. These are who our partners are. I want them to look at me and say, we cannot ever get rid of Brian Brown Racing because of what they're doing off the track and on. So I was a little bit long-winded there on that answer, but yeah, I think you have to just look at it from their side of the desk. It's easy to say, hey, give me some free suits and I'll be back next year for some free ones. That's the easy route. But what can you do to help the brands?
What you said is really key because every brand has a different objective. You know, energy drinks and beverage companies, they want sampling. They have consumers that they're trying to sell to on a daily basis, and they want to sell to anybody and everybody who might be thirsty. K1 Race Gear is not selling to the average consumer. They're not selling to me, in fact, because I don't race. They're selling to a very specific target market. And so by focusing your marketing to their market and by helping them increase B2B, and in your case, by putting them up with a distributor, you're creating value for them. Companies like Toyota, we said this yesterday, you might buy a Toyota once every decade, whereas you might buy a Monster Energy drink once a day, once a week. Who knows? So you're very right about that. And I appreciate you saying that. Different sponsors and different companies have different needs. Let's go over to Jason at USAC Racing. Jason, you see a lot of race teams. You've been in business a long time. I think the very first time you and I met were literally back in the Lucas Oil off-road racing days. I was hanging out with Kevin Miller. I forget what race it was. It's you've seen off-road racing, short course, late model, sprint car racing. What are some, when it comes to sprint car racing versus, let's say, drag racing and off-road, we have wealthier teams because to compete at the top levels, there's some big money there. But talk about sprint car racing, a lot of people without, middle income, blue collar, they can build a car and they can race, and it reaches grassroots America. So the sponsors that might be attracted to that type of racing are also different. What have you seen now that you're with USAC Racing that it creates value for teams and drivers on the call who are looking for sponsors?
Yeah, for sure. And can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're good. Audio's good.
Okay, perfect. But no, first off, I want to say thanks, Alex, for having me, and what you guys just heard from JR and Brian, that's some incredible advice. And I think there's probably a lot of people that would say, I want to get to Brian Brown's level. And, the advice that I would start out with right out of the box is look at you. Before you're thinking, I need a sponsor, I need this, you look inner, how do I look at the track? How's my uniform? Is it filthy? Do I look like I just changed the oil in it and half of it spilled on me? Is my car dirty? Is my trailer dirty? And I don't care if you have just a little tag along trailer, make that the cleanest tag along trailer in the pit area. And so really start with that, look at yourself and look at, the appearance that you're giving. And one thing that I would say, and I think Brian could probably even back this up on the years he's been around, but if you're at the local track level and you're starting your racing, a lot of your first sponsors come right out of that grandstand. I mean, it's a fan of the sport that is there watching, and then you have to impress them. And so the advice I'm giving you is, when you're at a race, do everything you can to get on the PA, do everything you can to interact with the fans, because again, a lot of times that fan is going to be the sponsor of your car. I mean, I think if you're familiar with like Avanti Windows, Jerry Petty was a fan sitting in the grandstands, and next thing you know, he's sponsoring 6 or 7 other guys. So that's one of the pieces of advice that I would give. And like I said, when you're at the track, you're working with that track. If it's a weekly track you're running with, or if it's a sanctioning body you're running with, you work with them because every sanctioning body will work with a driver and their sponsor to help elevate the show. So if it's making their experience at the track better, hey, we'll work with them to get them the best seats in the house. If it's going to help your team and help you get up and down the road, we're game. We're going to help with that. So again, the starting point, I can't stress that enough, is look at yourself, look at your team, look at how do your crew members work? How do you treat people at the track? If you're, out there bad mouthing everybody, running over everybody on the racetrack, causing fights and things like that in the pit area, I hate to say it, but you're out. I mean, you're not going to get sponsors that way. You have to act the right way at the racetrack. So starting with that, I know we've got other topics to hit on, so I won't go any further, but that's where I would start with is, look at you, your team, and how you guys act.
No, I like that, because Amanda was just talking about personal branding. Personal branding is key, because if a company has a similar culture to your personal brand, they might want to attach to it. But let's stay with you for just a second, because with USAC and USAC Racing, you've seen a lot of different racing series, a lot of different drivers. How many teams are actually going up to your announcers and introducing themselves, or maybe giving them a one pager so that the announcer will talk about them on the PA system?
Yeah,
I
you know,
noticed,
there
at
are
least with
some.
off-road,
I
it
mean,
hasn't happened a lot, but what do
yeah,
you
of
see?
course there are some, and as you mentioned, I don't say this proudly, but yes, I have been to more types of racing than anybody else in the world, and that's. I mean, I hate to say that because
It's
it just means
cool. It's cool. I like it.
but but anyway, but no, I mean, in our ranks, I mean, you know, being that our means of visibility is mostly through streaming, and we're on the Flow channel. But you know, our announcer or somebody being interviewed or whatever, you know, if you don't say it exactly right, yeah, we'll have guys come up and say, hey, you know, here's my sponsor, here's this, here's that. So yeah, that's great. I mean, we totally want that, but it's probably not enough. I mean, exactly what you're saying. I mean, I think sometimes we get into that mode of, well, if I had what he has, you know, and then, you know, you got to work your way there. I mean, Brian Brown, like he just said, he didn't start with a lot of money. He started at the bottom and worked his way up to where he's at. And that's how you have to look at it. You can't look at that guy at the top and go, well, if I just had what he's got, I'd be there today. Well, that's not how it works.
Right.
And I kind of want to touch on that a little bit too, if you don't mind.
Please
what
go
he
for it.
said, what he says exactly right. I always try to, it sounds cliche or guys laugh, but I always say to yourself, hey, if the sponsor bus pulled up out front at 5:30 and all these CEOs got off the sponsor bus and they didn't know anything about who won, who's good, who's bad, would your team stand out good or bad? Meaning just the overall appearance of your race car, the overall appearance of your crew, your truck, your trailer. It's my guys are I'm very lucky to have the crew guys that I have because they take very a high pride and we love when people come by and say, well, gosh, how do you guys keep this thing so clean? You could eat off your floor or whatever. There'll be nothing that drives me more crazy than when we go to Volusia here in 2 weeks. There will be trailers that when they drop the door, there will still be dirt in their trailer from Charlotte. And it's just like, I mean, it just makes me want to eat glass. I'm like, it is like, how is that even possible? And then they'll hear them bitch at the driver's meeting. Gosh, I didn't get any new sponsors this winter. Like, how'd you get them all? Or whatever the case, or how'd you keep them all? So it's like, you got to do a little bit of self work yourself. And, you know, making sure you have a nice, your uniforms look nice. Your crew uniforms look nice. To me, it's not just who wins the race and who stands in victory lane at the end of the night. There's only going to be one of those guys every single. It's like, to me, winning is who's got the best looking uniforms and car and even like if you look at my car, I try not, where this is a whole nother piece, but try not to have, the first thing I look at is I don't care about the paint scheme. The first thing I want is put my sponsors where no stripes are going through them, where I can see the car first, the sponsors first. And then we build Blackbeard does a great job, but we build the way our car looks around the sponsors versus you see some cars there, this looks like there's just stuff going everywhere and you can't even read the sponsor logo at 0 mile an hour. How are you going to read it idling around at 15 or racing at 120? So, that part, and when you say, well, gosh, you're able to keep your car clean and your truck and trailer clean and whatever because you have full-time guys. That is correct. But there are lots of people that are working at or coming to your local races there aren't mechanics, but all they want to do is they want to be a part of your team somehow, some way. When those people come down and say, gosh, I don't have a lot of money and I don't know anything how to mount tires, but is there anything I could do to help you? Actually, there is. Could you be at my shop on Tuesday night and help us clean the truck and trailer? Would you mind polishing these wheels, or would you mind whatever? And then slowly but surely that person then turns into, it could be a woman, could be a man, turns into, would you show me how to mount a tire? Well, next thing you know, now you got a crew guy. So, and in general, people in racing, they just want to be a part of it, whether it's the driver, the crew chief, the partner, or the person watching. It's a huge sport and it takes us all. And sometimes that fan turns into the guy that's sweeping your trailer on Tuesday night because guess what? Now he feels like he's a part of it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
so just that's a little tidbit of like, that was great though. What Jason said is people, I think people just, they get jealous because people get other partners, but they don't want to do any work. They just, wouldn't say they're lazy, but yeah, they're lazy in my opinion, you know.
Well, the key to remember is that a driver is not just competing on the track, you're also competing off the track. And today, you don't just have to race to be good and have value to a sponsor. You have to understand how to market. And like you said, a lot of brands and sponsors don't want to be associated with dirty backgrounds and dirty environments. They want to be clean and crisp, and they want to look fresh, and they want to look like something they're going to, someone might purchase.
Yeah,
So
to kind of touch on that, Alex.
Image is everything. Go for it, JR.
Well, I was just going to say, just real quick, I mean, we are short track racing. You know, we are in most cases in sprint cars, we are dirt racing. Well, that's a little bit of a hurdle you have to get over right there. I mean, somebody sponsoring you or writing a check, I mean, they may want to bring their family to the race. Well, if you're at dirt tracks where it's all porta johns and things like that, I mean, you have to figure out a way to overcome that. And so, there's a stereotype and a mentality of what dirt racing is, and that's where you have to stand out. You have to be clean. Your trailer has to be clean. Yeah. If you're in a dirty environment, like Brian said, I mean, it takes you 15 minutes to sweep the floor of that thing out. So just do it.
Yeah, and then I think too, you have to identify. I feel like everybody obviously wants to be, Sheldon Hodge with NOS Energy Drink, a fully funded team. That's what everybody dreams of, that scenario. But I feel like you have to look at what level are you at. Am I a local racer that's going to run 10 to 15 times, that's doing it for fun, that would love to do it for a living one day? Am I a regional racer that's running 30 to 50 times, that's on the brink of doing a high limit or an outlaw schedule? Or am I a national guy that just needs that last partner break? Because once you identify that, I feel like you can say, okay, if I'm a local guy, I need to go after, is there somebody in the grandstands that would love to buy me a right rear tire? That's probably your local tire shop or your local, whoever that might be. And then you obviously go up the level, from there. But if you're a local guy running 10 nights a year, you're probably not going to be able to call NOS and say, hey, I need $1 million. It's just how it works. You have to, I think once you have to look yourself in the mirror and say, okay, this is who our team is. This is what our team, is going to be at this moment. And you have to crawl before you walk. You start with, 15 years ago, I had one car, one engine on a borrowed truck and trailer in somebody else's shop. I didn't have any of my own stuff. And I had to build it step by step. I had to figure out, okay, these are the most key components today. And then after we got those components, what's next? Now we own everything, but you couldn't do that overnight. So I think that thing there is just identify who your race team is, and then go after the people that are in your lane.
And all good things take time, and things grow
absolutely
over time. Let's go to JR. JR, I know your relationships have grown over time. Last time you and I spoke, you were sitting in your car at the Chili Bowl. Are you at the Chili Bowl again today or this week?
Leaving tomorrow morning. No, I just got back from California this morning, and had some board meetings, and then headed out to Tulsa tomorrow, and we'll be there for the week. My team, God bless them, they've been there since day after Christmas for shootout, and let me roll this into what we're talking about though, because there's something here, and it goes to what Jason and Brian were just saying, and I think again why this is so important for the drivers at the amateur ranks or even at the pro level to come in here and listen to what's saying. The word of the day, if you can remember that, is nuance. It's one of the reasons you and I have talked about, like, I don't want to say I hate it. I don't want to put out a negative connotation. I don't like decks. Okay. For my brand, I don't. And if any of you guys are thinking of sending one, don't. Because there isn't any nuance. What you're hearing Brian and Jason say here is the nuance of racing at each level. Talking about looking up and going, man, I wish I had what he had. It's like, people, they see, what's that old saying? They see what we have, but they never knew the choices we had to make. Yeah, it's a long game, right? Like, and Brian said something really, really smart there, is like, you know, if you're operating on a 10 or 15 race, think about what's most important to get that car looking good and performing well. Because it might not be a $1 million sponsor. It might be a right rear tire. It might be a shock deal. So I think there's a lot of importance in understanding the nuance of sponsorship, and you can't get that from. I mean, even I'm not saying I'm down on social media, but I mean, it's got to be targeted. We've talked about that before, especially for a direct to consumer brand like Safety Gear, and I'm sure tires. It's none of us in racing outside of the big, you know, the big brands in NASCAR or the big box retailers or, you know, the energy drink wars. It's a push and pull conversation, and we're not. So if you want to ask myself or Brian, or I'm most certain Jason, he's seen it probably more than any of us, is like, what's the most important thing to talk about sponsorship? It's like, align yourself, you know, align yourself and foster an authentic connection with these guys. You know, I mean, I can tell you, here's a good one. I don't know if he's going to want me saying this, but I'm going to say it anyways. Brian has a
That's why I
great
love having you on, by the way.
Brian has a great sponsorship with or he did. I'm sure it's still on there with Andy's frozen yogurt or custard. And I'll tell you, I've got a stack of these coupons that he gave me to take my daughter, and she just begs me to take her all the time, right? And you say, okay, well, that's cute and everything. But I saw what Brian did with that sponsorship from day one, what he had to go through, the box tickets that he, you know, I don't want any VIP. I want him standing in the dirt with his kid getting their ice cream covered in dirt and sprinkled. I watched him foster that relationship with that company. And I don't know at what level it's at now. I mean, Brian can answer more of that, but like, that is a very, very authentic connection that the CEO and owner of a massive franchise really saw value in right away with Brian. So, you know, nuance, guys. Like if you're pitching decks and you're showing us impressions and all that, great. I'm sure you work very hard to do it, but everybody is different. Every brand is looking for something different on not only how you can stand out, but how you can position our brands with other people that are going to move the needle. I've told you before, my ratio is 5 to 1. Man, I'm going to give you a suit. I want 5 back.
Well, that's this. Speaking of those ratios, how do you determine whether to use a team, let's say like Brian, versus a series like USAC Racing or any of the series within USAC? Drivers on the call, should they be working with teams to secure sponsors like yourself? How do you make that decision? Where does the real value come in?
Great question. And I'll answer it like this. I have a cost associated with marketing every year. Okay. And has very little to do with individuals. You know, it's going to be AdWords, social media, the traditional methods that we could call them. Now, I have a staff of overall between both brands, about 100 people. Okay. Now, most of them are in manufacturing, a lot of them are in shipping, and then I have my key players that move the needle in sales. That's about 9 people. Okay. Now, if you think about the vast amount, and Jason can, with USAC, can talk about this, how many different segments of motorsports are operating in the United States, and think about how many of those can I position myself at and be in with experts. Okay. Teams, generally speaking, in sponsorship with series, it's not that they don't have the bandwidth to move the needle for the brand, but it's much more unique to position yourself. It's much more intimate with a race car driver. Because if I can't be in Terre Haute on a Saturday night because I'm in Volusia and Desiree's in Las Vegas and Jacob is in Port Royal and somebody else is down Texas Motor Speedway or at one of the NASCAR races, I'm depending on my ambassadors and my partnerships to be able to position themselves as brand experts. That's thought leadership. That's industry authority that I'm giving them. So it's far more important for me to align myself with my brand, you know, and again, I'm only speaking about safety gear and apparel. It's far more important for us to align ourselves with racers than with teams.
Because they become an extension of your marketing at events that you can't go to. That makes a lot of sense.
The right one does.
And I looked at it too, like, talking about different events, there was a time that, I had an all white car that, I was asking for help anywhere I could get it. And I remember, it's been a while now, but I remember when I was racing Knoxville full time, I checked with the track to make sure it was okay to do it. But I went down, from April to August and looked at, okay, who's sponsoring the nights? It's sometimes they're not associated with a car, and I would say, okay, Vermeer, are they first? My question would be, okay, are they associated with a car? Because I don't want to call somebody else a sponsor and say whatever, but I would call the connection. You would ask the track, okay, who do you deal with at Vermeer? So now you're not talking to the secretary, you're talking to the decision maker, and get that answer. And then I would call them up and just say, hey, first and foremost, I'm Brian Brown. I'm one of the drivers at Knoxville. First and foremost, thank you very much for supporting the track. I see your events on April 28th. Would you have any interest in being associated with a car also? They're bringing 500 people there that probably have no interest, and they don't know what they're even watching, for one, and they have nobody to cheer for. And I don't care any sporting event, if you have somebody to cheer for, you're going to be more engaged in it.
Yeah.
And just say, hey, I'll bring, if you want to have, I can get the event center out behind Dyer Hudson Hall. If you'd like to have I can come over there and bring the race car over there at 5:30. Put your decal on the car, and we'll have a Q&A, with your employees. And do it that way. You're looking at it, doing it a different way. They're already wanting to be a part of racing because they're supporting the local track or the series or whatnot. But just gives them another opportunity to look at it and say, we'd like to maybe be a part of a team too. And then the key part there is you can call them on Monday morning and say, hey, thank you very, very much for doing that, supporting me. We almost had them. We ran third. Maybe we could have got it another couple of laps, and then that could turn into a long-term partnership. They had fun on one night, but they would have probably a lot of fun on 40 nights. So you just got to look outside the box. And I think that's the thing too. Is another thing. When I was young, I always and looked at. This is back when the newspapers, when you could pick up a newspaper and actually
things.
and I would. I raced in Kansas City. I lived in Kansas City area, but I raced in Des Moines. So when I was driving, every time I'd go to Knoxville on the weekly show, I would get a Des Moines Register, and I would get that ad out, and I'd look at, okay, who is advertising in the newspaper? Who is
that's great. Yeah.
Who is they're spending money, so you don't want to waste your time calling people that aren't spending money. You can tell whether it's a roofing company, whether it's whoever it is, and then listen to your local radio, who's spending money on a sports radio channel that's the same type of niche, and then and then try to say, okay, hey, there's a roofing company that's in Iowa. Do you know ask your friends do you know anybody that works there? Yeah, I actually do know. I know the guy that's third in charge. Well, hey, can you get me his number? Because cold calling is hard. Like picking up the phone and just saying, hey, I'm looking to talk to the marketing guy. You're talking to the secretary. It's probably having a bad day anyway and doesn't really want to talk. Well, no, he's not available. Who knows if she even gets your number or proposal comes like JR. Like I'll send out a deck if it makes sense, but sending out decks, just cold calling decks, if you would call it that, just sending out 1,000 of them to 1,000 different brands that you know nothing about. Those decks cost money.
Yeah.
Stamps cost money. And I guarantee you 85, 90% of them end up in the trash. So I think the key is when you talk to a partner is to try to find out, is there anybody that I know or anybody that they know or that knows somebody within the company? Because that's going to get you way further than just calling up and saying, oh, if you call K1 right now, you're not going to talk to JR. You're going to talk to, JR might get the message, but it's going to be, later in the day or the next day or whatever. It's not going to be, you're not going to be able to just call up and say, let me speak to JR, please. And at the end of the day, JR is a decision maker, in most cases. So,
yeah,
I think there's there's a lot of different ways to get partners. And I almost said sponsors. I don't consider them sponsors. Sponsors that's donation in my opinion. Like, we're not looking for donations. We're looking at partnerships. Partnerships are, what can I do to scratch your back? And in turn, what are you going to do to scratch my back? That is a partner. And like I said, I'm not looking for a 1-year sponsor. I don't want my car to change logos every single year. And gosh, this guy just goes through them right, left, and center. I'm looking for 15-year partners.
Nice.
And they sound the same, but you look them up in the dictionary. There's a big difference in meaning.
And
Nice.
just to piggyback on that, and I know we got a second.
No, those are great words of advice. I appreciate that. And go
well,
ahead,
a lot of
JR. You
people-
also, last words of advice. Let's do it.
A lot of people might sit there and listen to that and say, well, yeah, that's easy enough to say. Let me tell you, from a brand standpoint, that is exactly what we're looking for. Also, you go, yeah, well, 15 years, that's going to cost JR, $250,000 in gear. That's okay, because I can tell you what Brian brings me over that 15 years with leverage, with partnerships, and all the things that we've gone through. Every manufacturer, every distributor, they are looking for long-term partnerships, because they build that intrinsic value that we're all looking for. Instead of playing the mass game of, I'll throw out 1,000 decks, and maybe if 2 of them hit, I'll get a little bit of money to get on down the road. Like, I get it. And I'm not judging that at all. Like, we've all been in the game and felt that, right? Where you had to do what you got to do. But the reality is it has no lasting effect on your brand or mine.
No, that is excellent. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, JR. Let's go to Jason then. Last words of advice.
Yeah, I think one of the messages that those guys both just gave right there, connections, leverage, networking. I mean, that's one of the most important things. And I do want to just share real quick a story just to kind of tie in exactly where I started with, everything being about you. A buddy of mine is a big recruiter at a Division I college for basketball. He had a guy he was recruiting close to me, so I went to a game to watch with him. The kid he was watching was scoring every time down the floor. But after every time he scored, he was pointing at the kid he scored on, and he was acting crazy and just being, not acting in a way that this recruiter was thinking. He closed his book and said, that's not the type of guy we want. Sponsors are exactly like that. So just always know, and like I said, a lot of sponsors are sitting in the grandstand before you ever know them. They're seeing you, whether they're there or not. So just make sure that that you're always conscious that the way you act could come back to pay dividends or hurt you.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback that. Sponsors talk to each other's as well. So if you're doing things off the track that aren't too cool, I guarantee everybody that sponsor knows is going to hear about it.
For sure.
Yeah, and I think if we're ending here, I had a couple of notes here, but I had one that was highlighted, and I think everybody wants to sponsor. They give you the money, you put the decal on the car, and then you kind of go away in hiding or whatever. If you say you're going to do something, do it no matter what it costs. If you tell them you're going to be at their location, you're going to be at 10 appearances at their location, don't do 8, do 12. If whatever you say you're going to do it, because all you have is your word when it's all said and done. And just remember, you're going to always have to renegotiate or renew your partnership, and they're going to remember. And I always look at myself and say, I've been lucky enough to be with Casey's, my primary partner, and FVP for over 15 years each. And I always just try to say, hey, if I look myself in the mirror every single day and say, you know what, I did what I could on the track, I did what I could off the track, and I went above and beyond, and I did everything else, every single thing I said I was going to do and more. If they decide one day that the new marketing guy comes in and likes golf instead of racing, I can look myself in the mirror and say, you know what, I did everything I could, and it was just time was, nothing's going to last forever. Time was over. Now, if I skip an appearance, or if I don't want to do something I don't do what I said I was going to do, I can't look myself in the mirror and say that. So I think the lasting words I would say is, if you say you're going to do it, no matter how bad it, suck it up and do it.
Nice. Those are great words of advice. In fact, if any driver on the call wants to keep sponsors for 15 years, this was an extremely valuable session. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Alan.
We'll see you next time.
Thank you guys very much for having us.
Thank you.
Yep. And we're going to close with our sports car racing sponsorship session. Let's pull up Mark Beatty. He's the brand director at Redline Oil. There he is. Let's pull up Eric Kuntz, who's the Canadian champion and owner of the Eric Kuntz Racing, and also Lou the Angeli, sponsorship director at BMW Club Racing. How you guys doing? I want to start well. Right on. Hey, Mark, since you've done this before, you know what this is all about. I want to start with you. Okay. You're the brand on the call. Why does Redline Oil sponsor sports car racing?
Well, obviously, we sponsor all forms of motorsports, but sports car racing is really to the core, of who we are. Gives us a great opportunity to reach a variety of year makes models, a variety of applications, a variety of stress level put on everything from brakes to transmissions to engines and things along those lines, which is what we're all about, right? I mean, we're all about protecting those things and taking care of those things. So we really like all forms of sports car racing, honestly, because of the variety. Just a great combination and some wonderful people out there.
So you're in a lot of different types of racing. How is sports car racing different from, let's say, off-road versus drifting versus drag racing versus sprint? Because some of them have, in some races you have a 3-second race, some you have a 23-second race, in some races you have a 1,000-mile race. And sports car racing is sort of in the middle there. It is much longer than, let's say, drag racing or drifting. Obviously, all applications are a little bit different as well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, obviously, we're very fortunate to be the oil of choice for the majority of the NHRA top fuel teams, and like I said, they're 12,000 horsepower cars that their average race is about 3.5 seconds. So, their situation is uniquely different. So, I mean, we formulate, our oils, based around what the race and the engine is intended to do and what it's trying to do. And in the sports car world, we also have a large pocket and presence in street oil, like hot rod oil, guys with the Chevelles and Camaros or whatever out there on the street. And so we really like our sports car side of things because that really kind of helps teach us, formulas and keeps us on track for a lot of the high performance street oils and things that we do. So, you have to offer them an awful lot of protection, but you also have to make sure that you have the capabilities of cooling. We have a great customer that runs that Dark Horse Mustang program, that came out this year, with the factory cars. And so we worked with Robert a lot because they were having transmission heat issues and stuff. And so we worked with him on formulas and worked with him on transmission fluids, and we got the transmission temperatures. We lowered them some 75 degrees in those cars for him. And so without those relationships and without understanding sports car racing and things like that, it brings us a lot of value and helps us a lot as a brand as well.
And you introduced me to Lou, who runs BMW CCA Club Racing. Lou, what do you do, and what can the club do that adds value for sponsors? And you are the sponsorship director there, partnership manager. So I mean, you deal a lot with sponsors. Let's talk about sports car racing and value to sponsors.
Sure. So I was listening in on the previous segment and don't know the gentleman's name. I'm assuming he was a racer and was talking about, sponsors are our partners. And Mark and I met a few years back, and I came into this role. I was a racer. I still am a racer, but I came into this role for club racing, BMW Club Racing, trying to build our sponsorship program to give back to our drivers. But a lot of that is, I think we talked about, you've probably said this in numerous segments, but, what can we give back to our sponsors? How do we work with them and produce a value for them to continue sponsoring our programs? We run 15 to 22 races a year. We have 500 plus registered racers. We run sprints and endurance, so 30-minute to 2.5, 3-hour races. And we run all over the country, including Canada. So we have a wide array of footprint. We kind of touch every corner of the nation. So finding sponsors that are willing to come on board, help us fund our races, provide benefit and value to our customers who are our racers, and then in turn, how do we provide that value back to the sponsors to keep them coming back year after year?
And how do you do that? What is the value to sponsors?
So a lot of it is we have headline sponsors that sponsor our race program. Most of our sponsors give out some sort of contingency award, but what we've done is we're coming up with a new program, and I don't want to announce it here because it hasn't been announced for 25 yet for our sponsors, but we're always thinking of ways to give back. So social media, trying to get our sponsors out to events, recognizing every one of our sponsors at every one of our events, at our drivers meetings, at our award ceremonies, getting, sponsors to sponsor our trophies, right? So that maybe we get a local sponsor who's recognized for providing trophies. But every sponsor has a flag or a banner that gets put up at every event. And then we recognize them via social media, like I said, and we ask our drivers to, spend money with our sponsors. They're obviously spending money on consumables, on helmets behind you, on, all the things that are required to get in the car and actually race. So we ask them to, patronize our sponsors and let them know that they're a club racer and that you really appreciate the fact that they support our, endeavors every year.
Right on. Thank you. Let's go over to Eric. Eric, you're a Canadian sports car racing champion. What do you do for sponsors? Where do the sponsors find value in your racing? And you have a lot of sponsors. So let's talk about that for a second. How do you find them? How do you get them? What do you do for them that keeps them keep coming back?
Really, it all comes down to networking. I mean, at the track, away from the track, anytime you have an opportunity to talk to somebody, you should. It can be sometimes just right place, right time. You meet somebody that introduces you to somebody else. It's always about finding ways that you can provide the sponsor value. I mean, a logo on the car is about worth as much as it costs to print it, right? There's really not a lot of value in the logo. And it really depends. I have some very local sponsors that don't want the logo on the car at all because there's no reason when I go to Quebec or Ottawa that there's no value there for them. So you have to find ways to bring value to that sponsor. So one of my sponsors, CSN, they're a collision repair center. They didn't give me any money, but when I bang up the car, I take it to them and they fix it. And when you're
huge.
pushing, when you're pushing hard, something might go wrong. And we had 2 street circuits on the calendar this year, so they helped us out a little bit with some work. But I took the car to their shop for a blues and jazz festival, and they had a whole section where there were everything from vintage cars to brand new Porsches, McLarens. So we had our car right outside their shop. People were walking up and down the street, and everybody wants to stop and look at the race car. So that's how I provided that sponsor value.
That's really cool. That when you do personal appearances, you're drawing in fans, people, customers to a business, whether it's a retail store or let's say a charity, a hospital. You can bring people in and create that hospitality and that feel good. And I think that has a lot of value. It's not just like you're saying the logo visibility, the logo exposure. It's the representing the brand and creating that environment where they can then take advantage of it and create some kind of hospitality. You have a lot of sponsors. How do you get all your sponsors? You have more sponsors than most drivers I know.
Introductions from actually a lot of them have been from my crew chief. My crew chief Vic has been absolutely amazing all season, making sure the car is always working. But I feel like about half of them on this side, about from Stova Honda, Rapworks, Rosewood, and Tracksport Performance. He's the owner of Tracksport Performance, but he's introduced me to all the owners. Just right place, right time, met the right person, and the introductions is what matters.
Do your sponsors work together? Do you have any cross promotions?
I've been trying to. They're a little disjointed at the moment.
It's normal.
I'm trying to work with an apparel company to then hopefully have them team uniforms along with apparel for the companies, their uniforms, whatever they need. I would like to try to connect people that way. So that's a gap that I'm currently trying to fill.
I actually know an apparel company that was just on, but let's go over to Mark. Mark, you're with Redline Oil. Do you work with other brands with your race teams to cross promote and do collabs and marketing collaborations?
We do a lot. I probably spend more time working with, in our particular situation, engine builders. And so, we may have a relationship with the race team, and part of the conversations I always have with the teams and the team owners and say, hey, who builds your motors? Talk to me about them. And so a lot of times what we do is we use the team that we're hooked up with for that introduction into the engine builder and stuff. So, because that's where we're trying to do. I tell people all the time, it's like, I can't give away oil, or I can't give away a discount on oil if we're not selling oil, right? So I mean, that's just the business side of everything that we do. It's like we talked last time, free oil is not free to me. It has a cost to me. And so when somebody wants free oil, it's like, I get it, but you know let's do this. Let's find some ways to sell some oil so that we have some opportunities to play with some oil on the marketing side of things. So that's really what we focus on. And I think that when you've been in the industry as long as what I have been, and been around like Redline, I mean, obviously, we great relationship with like Tommy Cunningham at Stroud. So we do a lot of things together with Stroud Safety, and so there's a few of them that we definitely will tag team on. Sometimes it's around a particular racer, sometimes it's around a race series. Just kind of depends on what we're both thinking and feeling at the time. But
Let's stay there for a minute. Racer versus series. How do you make that distinction, and where's the value in each?
For us, I try and not make it an A or a B, right? Because there's benefits for both, and then there's challenges with both, or if that's the right word to use. So it's not like I set out at the beginning of the year and say, okay, well, I'm going to do X amount of series sponsorships and I'm going to do X amount of racer sponsorships. I'm really not. It's really more about people. It's more about, like Eric was talking, and like, in the session before, as I've been listening throughout the day or whatever, Alex, and everybody out here knows, motorsports is a relationship driven business. It is all about relationships. We all get thousands of emails asking for sponsorship, asking for this and asking for that. And a lot of times, I kind of talk with people all the time. It's like, think back the best friend you have in life right now, or maybe the best friend you made in college. The very first time you met that person, did you walk up to them and say, "Hi, my name's Alex. I want you to buy me lunch"?
Yeah.
No. You developed a relationship with them, right? You found that common ground. Well, in motorsports, the common ground is already there, but if you're coming at a manufacturer, and it doesn't matter if you're a series, or if it doesn't matter if you're an individual, let's work on the relationship first and stuff. And so that's when like a series kind of throws their stuff. Hey, here's what we have going on. Here's what we do. Like Lou said, and I see Isaiah Drummers on here with the BMW, the Pro 3 BMW. They talk about, here's the things that are series. Here's what we're trying to accomplish as a series. And so if this aligns with what you're trying to do as a brand, is there an opportunity for us to lock arms and do some things together? It's working on that relationship side of things instead of meeting somebody for the first time and saying, "Hi, my name's Mark. I want you to buy me a new engine." Right? So
How do you start those relationships? How does a driver start a relationship with a brand if they don't know them yet? What's a good way? What's a good way
Well,
to
for me, I'm been a business guy my entire life, and I was taught a lesson. The first time I opened up my very first business, which happened to be a sign and graphic company and working on vehicle wraps.
That's cool.
My first customer was the Denver Nuggets, because I was in
Oh,
Denver
wow.
at the time. So
Good for you.
just right place, right time, right? Well, Tim Lywicki was president of the Nuggets at the time, and so he taught me very early, right after I did my very first job with him. It's like, Mark, we do business with those that do business with us. And so for me, to start a relationship, it's like, well, if you've never bought a quart of Redline oil, if you've never bought our transmission fluid, if you've never invested, if you've never done business with us, it's a bit challenging for me to really jump in and try and do business with you, because I mean, I do heavy research I can into anybody and everybody that applies online for sponsorship. And it's like, if I've seen for the last 3 years you've been with brand X, and before that you were with brand Y, and before that you were brand, then it doesn't take me long to figure out I'm just the next flavor of the week for you. And to be honest with you, I have no interest in that. That's not good for you, and you're going to learn that someday, but it's definitely not good for me. And so I have no interest in that. So, you start the relationship by, if you're racing and you're trying to do things, if you're buying products for companies from a particular company or group of companies, you're doing them well, you're proudly displaying their decal on the car, maybe you're even tagging them in social media without even quote unquote being sponsored by them, but you're putting forth those pieces over the last few years to build that relationship. Well, then all of a sudden it's an easier conversation when you reach out and say, hey, I'd like to talk to you about what's it take to take our relationship to the next level.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. And so, because you introduced me to Lou once again, how long is Lou? How long is the relationship with Redline Oil been, and how did you secure Redline Oil?
Well, that was actually my predecessor, but it's been a long time. So, we're all volunteers at the WCCA, right? So I am a business owner, and sales is kind of in your blood when you're a business owner. So when I took over, our program wasn't very strong, and we were just, basically begging our sponsors for money. Oh, you sponsor with us last year, why don't you continue to sponsor with us? And there was no give back. And we keep saying it, keep going back to it, but it's the relationship. Like, I was a racer, I was sponsored by Ground Control and MCS before they sponsored our series. I built a heavy V8 car, and I went out to my sponsors and I asked for help. I didn't ask for money. I asked for, let me run your product, let me prove it, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what we do. That's kind of why I was asked to become the sponsorship director, was how do we turn that over, and bring our sponsors to the table and say, what can we do for you to continue, supporting the club racing? Club racing, like I said, we got about 500 registered drivers, licensed drivers. We've got about 2,000 or so registered racers. Some don't have license anymore, but a lot of them go on to other series, and a lot of them ask the same questions, like, how do I get in touch with one of the sponsors to sponsor me? And my answer is always, well, I'm not going to tell you that. If you want to get in touch with a sponsor to have them sponsor you, and we've said it here, do something for them, right? Start promoting their brand. If you're really using their product, tell them why it works so well. If they come out to our events, we do meet and greets, tell them what you like about their products. A lot of our sponsors are kind enough to give contingency awards. So, we have Bimmer World, Hoosier, Toyo, Redline is obviously one of our big ones. We have MCS, we have HM. I mean, we've got about 20 plus sponsors, give or take. And each one offers something a little different. So if you're in our series and you're part of a sub series, our Spec E36 class, race team, or Spec E46 teams, our M2CSR teams, they have limits that they have to follow. And there are contingencies specifically for them. So, we tell our drivers, thank the sponsors, tell them how much you appreciate them. Don't ask for something. Tell them how much you appreciate them, because it makes my job easier to say, hey, Redline, Mark, listen, our drivers love you guys, and here's all the social media and the accolades, et cetera, et cetera. Will you continue to support us? And it's the same conversation I have with all of our sponsors, right? I have to look at it from a driver's perspective, but I also have to look at it from the sponsor director's perspective. How do I go hat in hand to my sponsors every year, unless we have multi-year deals, and say, hey, thanks for your support. Do you want to continue? If so, here's what I can give you. And I think when you and I first started talking, the reason for reaching out to you and trying to get involved in this was to find out more of what our sponsors want from series like us and our drivers, right? Like what do they want from us to give back to them so that they feel like there's a value to sponsor a series or an individual racer. Our series requires the same standard stickers on every car. Our premier sponsors get, a certain size sticker on every car. And then we try and do a lot of other, but it's always, go out, talk to the sponsors and see what they want. And,
Are your series televised? Is your series televised?
So there's only a handful that are televised, handful of races that are televised. We have two really big, we have a Southwest region series and then a Can-Am series, which is American and Canadian series. And those are starting to be broadcast live via radio and televised now. So we're working with a couple other groups, and that's some of the other benefit we're trying to bring to our sponsors is we'll give you a 30-second spot in between races or whatever it is to promote your brand, and we'll run your names like every other major series, right? We'll run your brand name when we're highlighting a driver or calling out fastest time of the day or whatever it is. But yeah, we're trying to get to that because we're all volunteer, nobody gets paid. And our, every dollar we bring in goes right back out to put on our events.
So because it's televised, if a driver's creating content that might
Right.
qualify for a vignette within that television show, is that a way that a driver can get their sponsor exposure, visibility, some kind of on-screen love? Do you work
We've
with
talked.
drivers like that by using their content?
We do. We brought on a marketing team about 2 years ago. We started a marketing group within our organization that is trying to gather all that content and put together highlight reels. We did one during our race schools. We try and promote a lot of that during race schools, show some of the video. We've been working with wireless cams, live wireless camera company that can record and televise in-car racers. They were willing to give us a couple during each event, but that'll also promote the brand. If the racer is specifically sponsored by World or HMS or Redline, whoever it is, that's also a great opportunity for our racers to do so. And even if they go out and buy it themselves, if they're looking to get sponsored and move on to another series, it's a great opportunity for them to continue that brand relationship.
And the reason I ask is because with 500 racers, at least active racers, race teams, and they're all running the logos of your sponsors,
Yeah.
you have 500 marketers marketing those sponsors. And if they're marketing well, whether through their own media, their own social, whatever it is that they do to market themselves, then those sponsors are getting 500 times the value.
You would hope. You would hope.
Is it working? Is it working?
Yes and no, right? So we have really two types of racers. We have the grassroots folks that, like me, who have had life changes at 50, have a kid who you probably hear screaming in the background, who used to race every other weekend and now only races a handful of races a year. And then you have folks that are building teams and trying to go on to other series, whether it be WRL, SRO, or IMSA. So they do a lot of their own social media, but we're actually trying to piggyback off of that to promote both our brand and their brand as well to our sponsors. So there is a lot of opportunity. It's a program that we've been trying to get off the ground, but again, with no money, like with no funding per se, it's hard to do. So we're doing it very grassroots as it is.
Right on. Thank you, Eric. I know you work with all your sponsors to get them a lot of visibility as well as work with the series. What are some things that you do with your series to give value to your sponsors?
So one of the things that happened this past season is our races were broadcasted on Rev TV, which is like the Canadian equivalent of MAV TV. So one of the things that the series helped me out with is they gave me ad space. So I was able to sell ad space to sponsors to help grow their exposure. So the little bit of a trade back is I got to film some of the ads. So my face was, hey, you're watching Rev TV or you're watching Sports Car Championship Canada broadcast on Rev TV.
Wow.
So it was got to do some of that, got to have some FaceTime and some ads. And then on top of that, my sponsors had ad space as well.
Nice. And so that's the visibility through the media. What do you do at the track when you go to different races, and where are you going? How many races a year? What are sponsors getting when they join your program?
we had 5 race weekends this past season. Next season, we're hoping to get 7 or 8 in. But the main thing that I did this year, I mean, every company needs a different activation. Every company has a different preference based on their marketing style. For example, Man-Made, they're underwear company. They make men's underwear. And their marketing style is kind of more goofy, fun. So we got a t-shirt cannon and we were launching underwear out into the crowd.
Nice. That's good. Instead of a t-shirt, underwear. I love that. I
Yeah.
haven't heard that
And
yet.
they
That's
had
great.
socks and stuff as well. So we'd launch some of that stuff as well. Hand out some hats. Just things like that. Every company is going to want a different activation. Obviously, a t-shirt cannon isn't going to work for Redline. I don't think shooting oil at people would be a good activation.
Maybe a flamethrower, but
that sounds more accurate. Another one we did is Amoco. They're a large scale infrastructure and building and construction company. There isn't really value in them marketing to the everyday consumer. So what I did for them was I'm affiliated with the Toronto Hospital for Sick Children. So we brought some of the patients out to the track to enjoy the races. People that might not always be able to have the opportunity to go racing themselves, but that love the sport, that want to be engaged. So 2 of the events this year we had I think about combined 15 to 20 children out to the track. And that's what they wanted. They wanted to be associated with that. So that's what I did for them.
that's excellent. I actually love that because in sports car racing, a lot of the value does come from hospitality and VIP experiences. It's unusual for a lot of the sports car racing. Let's say at least in autocross and cone racing, things like that. There is no television visibility, very little social media as well. In the higher series, the series that you're racing, you have media, you have activation opportunities, and you have hospitality. And because sports car racing tends to skew to a higher income demographic, I think that hospitality has a lot more value. That is pretty cool.
Definitely. I can even comment on that. Hospitality is one of the things we sell. And I know that one of my really good friends who raced alongside me for a couple of races this year, one of his big selling points was come to the track, enjoy the hospitality. We'll have food, we'll have everything set up for you. You come enjoy, you get access to the pit lane, you get access to the team, get behind the scenes, right? A lot of people love watching things like Drive to Survive and all the behind the scenes footage because it's a look into the life and they get to go and experience that for real life. And I think that has tremendous value.
Especially nowadays with, like you said, Drive to Survive, it's brought in a whole new fan to racing and visibility to motorsports. My wife, who's actually here, never was a huge motorsports fan. She started watching Drive to Survive, and suddenly now, not only her but her cousin, a lot of people are looking at motorsports that way. So you're right. I really like that. Mark, let's go to you for a second. When it comes to activation at the track, now we're talking about sports car racing. I know there's many different types. Does Redline Oil activate at the track? Because, if a beverage company activates, they're handing out samples. If a tool company activates, they're doing, testing Makita power tools, whatever it might be. It's harder for an oil company to activate at the track, but you can obviously create that hospitality environment. What are ways that teams can create value for you in the pits at the track, to the spectators, to the attendees, to the enthusiasts? What can drivers on the call do that could create value to brands like Redline?
Well, it's exactly what Eric said, and to kind of sum that up, some of you have heard me say this before, and that's, my philosophy is a high tide rises all boats. And so it doesn't matter if you're a sports car racer, if you're a cone racer, you're right, Alex. I mean, hospitality may look different, at different sanctioning bodies or different areas, but it's all about the experience, right? It's like, long time ago, back to my science shop days, we were working on an ad campaign for the NHRA, and the campaign was, you can feel it in your seat, right? Because
That's
because
good. Yeah,
when
that's good.
because when you're sitting there watching on TV, or you're bench racing in a garage and things like that. I mean, motorsports is one of those things that you have to live it. You have to be there. You have to feel it. And so I don't care if you're a small team or if you're a big team. I mean, if you're a small team, invite your neighbors out, and invite your cousin out, invite somebody else out. Come hang out in our pit area, and feel this and see what we have going on. And so then obviously if that member happens to be or that racer happens to be a member of Team Redline Oil, right? So we're reaping those benefits as well, because maybe they're introducing somebody new not only to racing, but they're going to say, hey, I see you got Redline in the trailer, or that type of deal. Talk to me about Redline, or do this or do that. So as a brand, any brand out there, we all benefit from that, right? I mean, it's like the racetrack benefits because you're bringing more people in, that maybe bought a spectator ticket. Everybody you're associated with benefits, and so no, it's that high tide. It raises everybody. So I don't care what you race, what series, what class, what category. Yes, invite people to the track if it's a big enough deal. And sometimes the word hospitality scares people, right, Alex? Because in this day and age, when you think about hospitality, it's like, oh well, I don't have the time to cook them this and feed them this and to do this with them and do that with them. So don't get hung up on the word hospitality. Just get people in your pit area, invite your neighbors, invite your friends, invite your family members, and let them experience what you're doing. And it's a game changer, because then it goes back to same deal. Then all of a sudden it's about relationship, because maybe that neighbor then starts going, I know a guy that happens to own a construction company. He doesn't probably promote his construction company, but he believes in sick children, and maybe there's an opportunity to do displays at hospitals, exactly like Eric's doing, right? You never know where those fingers go until you just make it happen. Invite them out, do something.
I agree with that, because if you bring 10 people to a race, even if one becomes a fan and they become a returning fan, that's how motorsports grows. We're doing these sponsorship summits to help fund racers at the grassroots team level, instead of the series level trickling down money, which is very limited. And that you're relying on one series to raise all the money for all the teams in that series. Motorsports doesn't grow very well that way. But if every team is better funded, they can go to more events, they can create better marketing. And in Lou's case, he has 500 teams, so 500 marketers. If those are 500 people doing a good job marketing the series should grow. Really should.
I love that word, because obviously, Redline Oil is owned by Phillips 66, and Phillips 66, whatever, 200th largest company in the
Big
world,
company. Yeah.
big
Massive.
company. I'm a part of although I'm the only one that carries the Redline Oil flag, both in brand directing and marketing in that building or whatever, and lots of other people do or whatever. So they throw that word at me all the time, grassroots, right? And so in the circles some of them run into or whatever, it's like they're all wonderful people. They're not being disrespectful, but they think grassroots is like, well, that's what we used to do 25 years ago. We're way more sophisticated than that. And I wear that word like a badge of honor. It's like,
same.
you know what? I'll take it any friggin' day of the week. I'll take 500 Erics out there doing grassroots marketing for our brand any day of the week versus some other sophisticated deal, because it goes back to the same deal. Motorsports is all about relationship. You can't geofence your way into a relationship. I'm sorry, you just can't. You can't text message, your way into a relationship. It's all about the people.
Let me ask this: with Redline Oil being owned by Phillips 66, is if you were to sponsor a team through Redline Oil, would that lead to opportunities with Phillips 66 down the road, or
No,
broader
none.
sponsorship?
None.
No.
There's no pathway there whatsoever.
Why is
I get
that?
asked that all the time. It's just the way the company works. Not my choice. It's just, but no, there is no pathway. Because first off, nothing Phillips 66 does. Nothing Phillips 66 does. I'm gonna say it one more time. Nothing Phillips 66 does is motorsports driven at all.
Interesting.
Their philosophy and their brand. Everybody always tries to tie in the gas stations. Well,
Yeah.
maybe you can get me a Phillips 66 gas card. Well, Phillips 66 does not own a single gas station. Okay,
Was it a franchise? Are they all
they're
franchises?
yeah, they're all
Oh, well, there you go.
owned by other people. So
All right.
like I said, I get hit up with that type of stuff all the time, and it's natural. I get it and stuff like that. But now there is no path
Well, that makes sense. If the
at all.
franchises, for those on the call that don't understand,
Right.
it's, when you're going after a marketing budget from a big company, try to go for a Coco company owned, company operated brand, because they have a universal marketing budget for all of their locations. But if it's a franchise, even if they have 2,000 or 5,000 locations, usually the marketing budgets are limited to those individual locations. So it's much smaller and not as easy. And they don't work together all the time either. They might have common standards, common
Right.
guidelines, but they don't always have the same marketing budget.
Yeah, they each one of them, they do their own thing station wise and things like that. So we don't have any oversight or not even any common budget for them and stuff like that. So yeah, that's just Sorry, didn't mean to derail the conversation onto that, but it was a good question because I do get asked that question a lot. So
Hey, you know what?
yeah.
We were all wondering. So you answered the question. That's what we need.
Yeah, no worries.
So hey, on that topic, we're going to wrap it up here. But any final words of advice? I'll go to you, Lou, and then we'll close with Eric. Last words of advice, racers on the call seeking sponsorship. Could be any general advice, does not have to be brand specific. Go for it first, Mark, Lou, and then Eric.
Oh, go ahead, Mark.
Just get out there and make it happen. Just invite people, talk to people, just be your true, honest, authentic self and make it happen. Don't blindly send decks to companies. Build that relationship with companies. First off, be a customer of that company. Build a relationship with that company, and it just simply takes a little bit of time. I saw that Megan Meyer was on here earlier, whatever, and I unfortunately missed her series, but I'm sure that's probably exactly what she was talking about, is all that this is a relationship driven business. Build a relationship first, and more important, just make it happen. Just listen to young racers like Eric that are just out there connecting dots, trying to lift everybody up the same way and doing things. So
right on. I like that. I appreciate that. Thank you, Mark. Lou, last words of advice.
Same, I echo that, right? Especially in our series, what we consider, grassroots, really club racing. It doesn't matter if you start where, we've got a lot of racers that have gone from us to pro racing and started cone chasing too, right? So get to know your sponsors, buy their product, use their product. Don't ask them for anything. Show that there's a worth into what you're doing and that you have a plan to go to whatever series you think you're going to go to. And when the time comes, show them that plan and show them what you've been doing without an ask, right? Just build that relationship is really key.
Right on. Thank you, Lou. Eric, last words of advice.
So for me, it's the 5% on track, 95% off track mentality. Like you're on track for such a little amount of time. All of the work that you do off track matters more than what you do on track. Your driving career cannot outperform your sponsorship career, or I don't know if I put that properly, but
no, it's perfect.
You did. Good job.
Yeah. Sponsorship is what's going to get you to that next level. And you constantly keep winning and winning and winning and saying, I need to get to the next level, but you haven't done any work on sponsorship. Eventually you're going to run out of money, especially in the world of road racing, sports car, open wheel, wherever you want to go. The budgets get big very, very quickly. I've known some people that have made it to Formula 3 and then they look at the F2 budget of €3+ million a year and they're like, oh, okay, I can't do that, and I have no sponsors that can get me there. So make sure that your sponsors are in line with what you are doing and with your where you're going in your career.
Well, I think that is the perfect close to the 2025 Motorsports Sponsorship Summit. That was a great one. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, all of you. And then thank you to all the panelists who are here over the past 2 days. I'm real curious to know if the 2-day format, if you like it. I'm curious to know if you like the Sunday sessions. This is the first Sunday session we've ever had. Jury's still out. I'm going to take a survey and see what people think, see what we do next time. And thank you especially to Blue Sea Advertising for letting us, or hosting it here and letting us sit here and film, on a Saturday and on a Sunday from their location. If you need any more information on sponsorships, go to sponsorshipsummits.com or motorsportsmarketingtips.com. And if anybody has any questions, just feel free to email me. I'm happy to answer emails. Alex@sponsorshipsummits.com. Thank you once again. I'll see you guys next time.